19th, 2013. Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Councilor Graney? Here. Councilor Camardo?
Here.
Councilor Smith?
Here.
Councilor Rozika?
Here.
Mayor Quill?
Here. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you remain standing for a moment of silent prayer and reflection, and I'd ask you to keep in mind Dorothy Smolak, mother of our Assemblyman Gary Finch, who passed away this week. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll start out with our public to be heard. Clerk, if you read our rules and regulations, please.
I have forgotten them, but I will try to remember them. Should remember them. At this time, we will open the public to be heard portion of our meeting. We ask that before you speak, you give us your name, address, and affiliation, if any. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Also, if you have any comments regarding employees of the city, that you direct them to the city manager and not to the individual. We ask that your comments be courteous and follow common rules of courtesy. Sorry. Thank you.
Please.
My name is Kim Pearson. I live at 12 State Street in downtown Auburn. I promise you I'm not going to come every single week, even though I've been here several times. First, I would like to thank you for moving forward with the seeker on the Callett building. I think it's at least a step in the right direction, so I appreciate that you voted that way. But I'm here to discuss the parking situation and the, oh my God, what do you call it?
Meter parking?
Yeah, the parking situation that is being proposed before you about increasing the parking times from 9 to 5 to 9 to 9. Personally, it doesn't necessarily affect our store at this time, but as time goes by, we may change the hours of our store, but I think it's a wrong mistake. I think it's a wrong direction to take. We have a lot of people that are attending downtown now. The 2-hour limit is, I just don't see how it's going to work because it's now a social atmosphere. In addition to the fact that there are going to be considerably more people living in downtown. So if I have someone come to my house for dinner for the evening and we end up playing cards and they leave at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, they're going to walk out and find a parking ticket because they've parked past the 2-hour limit. And I think it's unrealistic to expect them to go out and move their car. And with all the other apartments that are being built, they're paying a good amount of money to rent those apartments, and a lot of those people are from out of the city, and hopefully we're bringing more people into the city to spend money. So I think it's really foolish that we are considering increasing the time limit till 9 o'clock at night. And I know it will raise money, but I can't believe in the end it's going to raise money because people don't like to get parking tickets. So I hope you will consider not passing that resolution. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Didabo, and I live at 229 North Hoops Ave, but I am the owner of Mesa Grande Taqueria at 100 Genesee Street. And first of all, I want to thank you for your time tonight, and second of all, I want to thank you for paying attention to the parking issue. It is an important issue that I've been talking about for a long time, and we do need to take a look at it. We do need to address it. But I agree with the previous speaker. I don't necessarily think this is the solution. I think it's going to create more problems than it will fix. You know, I personally, it could potentially benefit my business from the standpoint of turnover at night. However, 2-hour turnover is not going to be enough to benefit my business, so I don't think I'm actually going to see much good there. And in terms of creating revenue for the city, I think if we can come up with some more creative solutions, I think in the long run we can generate far more revenue from the city, for the city, from continuing to support the business that's already there. Auburn has begun to thrive all day long, downtown Auburn, and I think if we can support that and really grow that, I think we'll ultimately see more revenue come into the city. So again, what I've sort of been preaching to anyone who will listen for probably the last 3 years is I think we really need to get a group of stakeholders together. I think we need to take a very hard look at this problem all day long, 7 days a week, and I think we need to come up with a comprehensive plan and approach that accommodates all of the different end users at all the different times of the day and week as best we can. I mean, we're probably not going to come up with a perfect plan that can really accommodate everybody all the time, but I think if we put our heads together, we can come up with a pretty good plan that accommodates most of the people most of the time, and ultimately, again, we'll just breed success, bring more people downtown spending more money, bringing more money into the city coffers. So I would urge you to table this for now, because I think it creates probably more problems than it solves. But I would also urge you to really think hard about putting a group together of stakeholders so we can really take a hard look at the problem and come up with some comprehensive solutions. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Edward Morrow. I'm the owner of Morrow's Table here in Auburn. And I also wanted to ask that you did not pass the resolution to extend the parking hours into the evening. You know, people, when they go out to dinner, you know, if say someone drives from Rochester to come to our restaurant, which we get a lot of patrons from Syracuse, Ithaca, Rochester, Seneca Falls, and they come and they dine with us and then they receive a parking ticket. It's very much out of the norm of what they would expect, because normally the parking in the dinner hour is not charged. They're not going to want to come back. I don't think that we want people who are driving here to be penalized to come to the downtown in Auburn. I think it's going to hurt the city in the long run. You know, I look to the fact that, you know, if you look at the strip malls, their success, and the malls, the pyramid malls, their success with the retail part that used to be in a lot of small downtowns is because they have parking. People get frustrated very easily by having to pay to park. You think it's not very much money, but they do not like it. And then it ends up hurting the downtown because you don't bring the people downtown. You don't have that positive, I want to go to Auburn, which then leads to more restaurants of our types and more fun bars and more retail, which in the end is what really will help the downtown. So thank you for your time, and please consider not penalizing the people for coming to the downtown in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conaguglia and then Mr. Berry, please.
Thank you. Louis Contaguglia. My son and I have a law office here in the Genesee Place. And I'm not going to repeat the very eloquent presentations that have been made. I'd like to point out, though, to the council that this effort to vote on this very important issue should have been published in the newspaper to give the public an opportunity to either come here or to talk with their councilman or mayor. And it's going to look as if it was purposely set up this way, although it may not have been, I'm not saying it was, to rush it through without enough public input. That's my first concern. Secondly, you probably noticed that the licensing bureau there in the county office building has set up an evening hour once a week to encourage individuals who need to renew the registration on their vehicles or boats to be able to come in during the evening. Now that means a lot of money to the county to have those renewals done here locally rather than on a state level. It brings money into Cayuga County. And I'm concerned that with the impact that it's going to have on the eateries here, as pointed out, we're going to lose tax revenue, sales tax revenue, and the like. And I'm concerned about Wegmans. That's the only free parking area down here where people are going to go down there to park to avoid paying at the meter from 9 to 9. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Mr. Berry?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. John Berry, 53 Lansing Street with Tangle's Hair Salon. Last week, you approved the resolution for the Swartz Family Performing Arts Center on State Street without a parking commission, while the street is only 10 feet wide at one point, contrary to the New York State Fire Code 503.2.1, which states you need 20-foot wide street or 26 feet wide street for an aerial fire truck. The houses on Lansing Street are no higher than 2 stories, which is not a required aerial truck area. And also, do not forget the New York State Fire Code 503.2.1 has a list of exceptions. Exception number 3, which reads, fire apparatus access roads are not required for detached 1- and 2-family dwellings regulated by the Residential Code of New York State, which is the situation on Lansing Street. The citizens of Auburn know all of you from past public statements will do almost anything to help Auburn businesses to grow and survive, to help the tax base in these trying times, as you have for State Street. I am also happy to see that the mayor and council, the fire chief, and codes department have made an exception to the New York State Fire Code to help the Auburn businesses on State Street. I don't see why they can't waive the New York State Fire Code on Lansing Street. Now, my question to you, Mayor and Council and City staff, prove to the citizens of Auburn that you are pro-business, that, as you say you are, and direct the City Manager and his staff to reinstate parking on both sides of Lansing Street between North Fulton Street and Holly Street in the summer months. It's only 300 yards. So our building that houses 2 businesses can survive. This parking problem has been on and off again since 1997. And would someone please get back to me on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Mr. Cuddy, please.
Terry Cuddy, 133 South Hoops. I have concerns about the plan to increase the pay-to-park hours in downtown Auburn. I understand this is being considered as a way to raise money, but the drawbacks outweigh the benefits. On one hand, we are trying to promote downtown as a destination. On the other hand, we are throwing obstacles into that vision. I can't think of another city that does that. Visitors should not have to worry that a night out may result in a parking ticket. We should be inviting people in, not driving them away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cuddy. Mr. Huffman.
My name is Justin Huffman from the Camardo Law Firm, 127 Genesee Street. And we have serious concerns about the secret review that was performed for the Schwartz Theater project last Thursday. The notice of the condition negative declaration was published in yesterday's environmental notice bulletin for the DEC, despite the deadline for posting having been 6 p.m. Wednesday, which was before last Thursday's meeting. I contacted the DEC to inquire about how it got posted a week early and found out that a request for an extension was made so the city could pass the CND at the 9/12 meeting and still have it published on 9/18. This is troubling in that it implies that the council's vote last week was preordained. It is also troubling that the extension request was made by a paralegal from Hancock Esterbrook. The problem here is that Hancock Esterbrook does not represent the city. It represents the college. We are unaware of the city council authorizing Hancock Esterbrook to take any action on behalf of the city, and therefore we believe that the posting is a nullity. We believe that the city as lead agency has not yet submitted notice to the DEC for publication and must do so before the public comment period may commence. I am asking the DEC to look into this matter accordingly. As for the condition negative declaration itself, the city has again refused to do soil and groundwater testing and has refused to seek a variance with respect to the fire code and safety issues relating to Sept Street. If the city refuses to rectify this issue before the CND becomes finalized, we will have no choice but to proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Michael McCall. I'm the Vice President of the Auburn Enlarged City School District Board of Education. I'm here this evening along with our superintendent and several members of the school board to speak with you for a few moments about the School Resource Officer Program. There have been 19 mass shootings in the United States since 2008. Public school districts see these events as compelling evidence that a critical shift in how we ensure the safety of our children and the community is necessary. The School Resource Officer Program, operated by the Auburn School District and the Auburn Police Department, has been heralded as one of the finest school resource officer programs in the state. It has been an integral part of our student support base for almost a decade. Yet today, the SRO program is in jeopardy of being eliminated. This is due in large part to the perceived disingenuous approach in recent discussions with the district by representatives from city government and a shift in leadership of the Auburn Police Department. In February of this year, during the district's annual budget process, representatives from the district contacted city officials concerning the SRO program. As has been past practice for the better part of a decade, the district was assured that the city envisioned no changes or alterations of any significance to the program. Based on these assurances, and with cost information provided to the district by the city, the district budgeted an expenditure of $232,000 to continue the SRO program for the current school year. On August 8th, the superintendent and school business executive met with City Attorney John Rossi, City Councilor Matt Smith, and Chief Brian Nagel to discuss the SRO agreement. At that meeting, it was communicated that the school resource officer contract was fine and would be followed as it had been in years past. The focus of this meeting was instead directed by the city to the issue of crossing guards and shared services. The district then received a letter from Corporation Counsel dated August 14th. The topic of this letter focused on proposed changes to the SRO program and overtime costs. Chief Nagel had communicated concerns related to overtime costs associated with the SRO program and requested the city meet with the district to discuss this matter. The district then received a second letter from City Manager Selby dated August 30th outlining what was deemed to be the real costs for the School Resource Officer Program and a desire by council to, quote, delay execution of the agreement pending further discussion of funding, close quote. We were confused by the new calculations that were being applied to expenditures related to the program. Specifically, costs for officer salaries were being determined in new ways, and additionally, there was an attempt to quantify the time of the supervising sergeant. These new calculations project an increase of almost $200,000 to the current cost of the School Resource Officer Program. The letter went on to state that, quote, the city's current budget situation compels us to examine all of our costs and to seek as much cost recovery as possible.
Sir, I'm going to have to cut you off. Your time is up. I'm sorry about that, but those are our rules, so.
Can someone else take another 3 minutes to read it?
Whatever your choice is, that's fine.
I'm Dia Carbajal. I live at 116 Curtis Place. I'm a member at large of the Board of Education. This comment is especially troublesome because the district used the cost figures provided by the city when budgeting for the SRO program in March, and the district had been assured by the city representative at a meeting days earlier that the SRO program would remain fundamentally the same. At the request of city representatives, the superintendent and the school business executive met again on September 9th to discuss the SRO program. This time they met with Doug Selby, John Ross, and Sergeant Greg Dan. Although the district was led to believe that Chief Nagel would be in attendance, he was not present. At the meeting, district officials explained that we negotiated the School Resource Officer Agreement in good faith with the City Comptroller in February and March, and it was agreed at that time that the district would expend $232,000 for this service. The superintendent and business executive also submitted that the district was amenable to renegotiation during our upcoming budget season for the 2014 and 2015 school year. However, they insisted that the district would honor the current budget limitation of $232,000 that was overwhelmingly passed by taxpayers last May. District officials left this meeting once again assured that there would be no relative changes to the administration of the school resource officer agreement for this school year. Fast forward to the week of the first home football game. The district was alerted on Wednesday that SROs may not be present at Friday's game, as has been past practice, and despite reassurances provided by the district in 2 separate meetings that the agreement would continue as in years past. On Friday morning, hours before kickoff, the district received final confirmation from the Auburn Police Department that school resource officers would not provide support as they had always done in the past. Citing concerns about overtime cost and direction from the City Council, the chief informed the district that any participation by the SROs in this traditional and supposedly continuing service would result in an overtime fee to the district. There is an obvious disconnect in what the city is communicating to the district in written correspondence, discussing in meetings with the superintendent, and the resultant actions by Chief Nagel. We accept that there may be a communications gap among representatives from the city government and the Auburn Police Department, and therefore we are here tonight to clarify for you and the public what was transpired. Furthermore, we are gravely concerned by the unprecedented decision to charge the district a fee for school resource officer support at a co-curricular event. In fact, we received an invoice for $960.
Ms. Carvajal, I have to cut you off. If someone else wants to pick it up from there, from the school district.
My name is Amanda Grover, 9 Benton Street. I am also a board member of the Auburn City School District. We received an invoice for $960 for SRO coverage that was requested by the superintendent at last Friday's football game to cover the unanticipated lack of SRO participation. This is professionally unacceptable. Board members have begun to question whether the city intends to make up its budget gap on the backs of the district and our students. The Board of Education cannot in good conscience continue to pay these costs for services that have traditionally been covered by the language in the SRO agreement. There is another home football game tomorrow evening. The district does not have the resources to pay almost $1,000 for the SROs to be present. We respectfully request that the city and the Auburn Police Department prioritize the safety of our students and community. To honor the SRO agreement, as the city has repeatedly assured the district it would and continue to provide the same level of support from years past without burdening the school district with trumped-up costs that have never before been levied. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, I think you've been waiting for a while, please.
My name's Andrea Kosachoff. I own All Tied Up Yarns, which is a small yarn shop on State Street. It is one of the few retail establishments that we currently have downtown. I have customers coming from Watertown, from Rochester, from Binghamton, and the biggest concern is the parking and the time limit on the parking. When we have classes or events at the shop, they typically run 2 hours plus. It's a huge concern for people to have to stop, run out, move cars, put money in the meter, whatever. I also try to steer my long-distance customers to our local restaurants. They're right within walking distance. The 2-hour parking does not give them enough time to stay at my shop, look around, and then patronize one of our local establishments. I also wanted to say that this past summer, my husband and I and some friends from downstate had the opportunity. We parked on Genesee Street, we walked to Morrow's and had a wonderful dinner, we walked to the Public Theater, saw a wonderful show, and then walked to A.T. Wally's to have drinks after the show. And it was such a wonderful night out. It was wonderful to see that amount of people walking around in downtown Auburn at 9 o'clock at night. If we had had to worry about where our parking meter was, how much time we had left, it would not have been the same kind of evening. And it would, I think if we want to create an environment where we really want people to come and take advantage of all the wonderful things we have here, we need to look at our parking situation. And I realize that there are many issues, there are many needs that need to be met, but having people pay until 9 o'clock at night and on Saturdays, I don't think you're going to be benefiting the city in the long run. I think it's going to be a great detriment. Thank you.
May we have your name again for the record, please?
Kosachoff, C-O-S-A-C-H-O-V.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Hi, Don Quinn, 19 Augusta Street. in reference to the parking downtown, I lived in the city for 70 years and we never had parking until 9 o'clock. Now, years ago, the stores used to be open till 8:30 on Friday night. Then there was parking till 8:30. You paid parking. Now there are no stores open after 5 o'clock, so why do you need paid parking? How much are you going to make on it? In order to enforce it, how much does it cost? You got to hire a guy to come in and check the meters. Is he going to make his money, or it's going to cost you money? Let's do common sense. People stop at Hunter's Diner at 6 o'clock to get something to eat. They got to pay the meter? That don't even make sense. Let's just use some common sense here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, my name is Sue Waby. I live at 153 South Hoops Ave. I'm also the organizer of the Finger Lakes Art Cooperative located at 101 Genesee Street. I feel like a broken record because I was just here a couple of weeks ago. And as you're all aware of, there is wonderful things happening downtown. A lot of activity in the last few years. We've seen a real turnaround. Positive things are happening in the city. This city is becoming something that many visitors want to come to and enjoy all that we have to offer in terms of restaurants, theater, our cocktail lounges, and some of the retail stores that we do have. We want more retail stores. I don't know where the idea came from that we should charge for parking until 9 o'clock at night, but it's totally unacceptable. If you compare cities around the region of similar size, and we cannot compare places like Seattle and Washington, D.C. and so on, let's look at cities of similar size, I'm sure they do not do this. And the city seems to have, with all due respect, not to anyone here, but we seem to have a reputation and a track record of shooting ourselves in the foot when good things are happening. So let's use some common sense, as was just previously said, and I can understand that street parking, that should be first come, first serve. If you want to generate some revenue, contract out with a Monroe Parking and use some of the municipal lots that are not used in the evening for the overflow or for the parking garage. If that's something that it's a revenue generating thing, bring an outside contractor in to use those lots that are vacant during the evening hours and on weekends. But street parking is first come, first serve. It's for the enjoyment of the people who come down and patronize our downtown and bring revenue into this community. And I'm sure that the sales taxes that are collected are of benefit to the city and to the county. So I implore you to please reconsider this vote and vote against extending the parking, the paid parking, until 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. My name is Mike Spino, and I live at 41 Lake Ave here in Auburn, and I own Spino Music downtown. We're probably one of two, we call ourselves survivors of the golden era downtown. And what frightens me the most in the 40 years I've worked downtown is to see all this progress made in the last year and to have something like this happen. Everybody's talking about the revitalization of downtown. The revitalization includes apartments in those once vacant buildings. We went through a lot this year to meet code to get our apartments up to level. Now I have nowhere for the tenants to park. Ours is a 3-story walk-up. Granted, they're beautiful 3,000-foot apartments, but I can't fathom asking my tenants on a Saturday night in January from 3 floors up to walk down and feed the parking meter, because what I did in assisting the city in the seminary lot was give away an easement to our driveway and give away 8 free parking spots. So by cooperating with the city, because I love downtown. I'd move the business if I didn't. I love downtown. So by cooperating, it's like less than 2 years later, by giving up what we had, now I've got to punish my tenants by asking them, please, don't worry about it. If it's 10 below zero and your wife's parked out back, it's got 1 free spot for her, you just keep running down those stairs, feeding that meter, or hand me your ticket every day. I'll just deduct it from your rent and pay it for you. It just doesn't seem to make any sense, especially on a Saturday. And you've got some people in this room that have invested a lot in downtown, new restaurants. I've never seen this much traffic downtown in years. And I've been in that building since I was 10 years old. I'm third generation. This is our 65th anniversary. I don't want to celebrate our anniversary this way, and I implore you to please reconsider, not just for myself. My business has dealt with parking issues for years, but all those new tenants that you're looking to move in these upstairs apartments and the landlords investing all the money to refurb those buildings, it just doesn't seem just. The sales tax revenue you're going to get from all these businesses that come down is more than going to compensate for what you're going to get in parking fees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, I believe.
My name is Colin Sullivan. I live at 12 Holly Street here in Auburn, and I'm on the board of the Cayuga County Arts Council. On the behalf of the board of the Cayuga County Arts Council, I want to thank Council for their continued support for the Shines Theater project. Tonight you have the opportunity to continue funding for the Brownfields grant to assess the hazardous materials, the asbestos within the Shines Theater. This is a critical vote from our perspective. Without the comprehensive information that this grant will provide, it is impossible to move forward with revitalizing and reopening the Shines Theater. Having the information that this grant will provide will allow us to go to funders and say, this is the problem. We are asking for you to invest in downtown, invest in Auburn, invest in our community. Without this information, we're asking people to take a leap in the dark, and that's really a very tough order. So once again, thank you for supporting us in the past, and I ask you to please support us going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons, please.
Good evening. My name is Bernie Simmons. I live at 11 Melrose Road here in Auburn, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my partners at A.T. Wally and Company, downtown Auburn. Just to reiterate, we've invested into the future of downtown Auburn. It's been great so far. We've been there 5 months. We get a lot of transient people from out of the area that come in and out of our business, and I think I'm in line with what everybody else has said. To increase the parking hours till 9 o'clock at night is not the prudent thing to do at this time. I think you're gonna make enemies as opposed to friends, and people that are coming in, they're going to go out, they're going to see the parking ticket, they're going to pay it, hopefully, but then they're going to think twice about parking, and there is, like Sue Waby had said, there's several lots that are unused and could be used as a municipal lot at night. When you drive to Rochester, you drive to Syracuse, and you go into those areas of business that have bloomed over the last 5 or 10 years, they all have municipal lots where people, and I do it myself, we go in, you park, you get your sticker, you pay at the end, you put a credit card in. There's 3 or 4 different ways that you can pay for that, but everybody's in one area, and it leaves all the on-street parking to first come, first serve. So with that, I hope that you will reconsider going forward with that proposal to vote on the 9 o'clock extension. I have another, if I could, a question, first of all, with alternate side parking. Is that within the city limits in residential areas? Is that a 7-day a week, every 24 hours a day?
Mr. Simmons, we're not allowed to answer questions or debate.
Oh, you're not? I thought that, okay, I thought that I could ask a question. I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. I'm sure Mr. Selby will be in contact with you.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at Hamilton Avenue in particular. During the day, the Cayuga Centers, I believe, it used to be the Cayuga Home for Children, is located on Hamilton Avenue. My kids just bought a home up there on Hamilton Avenue. They're having a lot of issues in the evening time with parking tickets. Nobody is cited during the daytime hours, but after 5 o'clock, they've, I don't know, I mean, they've got a stack of them right now. So that was my question. So if you could get back to me, I certainly would appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll be in contact.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Anthony Pacini. I own Swabby's Tavern in Auburn, New York. I live in Cayuga, New York. I just want to thank everybody else here for thinking the same things I do. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm against the parking proposal. There we have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Connie Riley, Executive Director of the Downtown BID Business Improvement District at 128 Genesee. Of course, I agree with all of these people who have just spoken about not having paid to park until 9 p.m. I do have some alternatives for revenue downtown. Instead of giving out tickets, instead of the 9 p.m. parking, give out tickets for speeding downtown, which there's quite a bit of that. Driving through crosswalks when there are people trying to walk across them.
Amen.
Turning from the right lane to get into a parking spot on the left side. It happens so many times every day. And I'm sure there have been accidents, but there are a lot of really near misses. And these are all well-deserved tickets. And driving in here tonight, I thought there are a lot of bicycle riders that pedal very fast on the sidewalks, and it's becoming a problem. They could get a ticket. They're all well-deserved tickets, and they're all in the interest of public safety. I think that's very important. So it wouldn't even hurt to have a patrol person downtown. Maybe not 24/7, but at important times of the day. So that's all I have to offer to this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Legislator Lattimore.
How are you tonight, Mayor, Council? Just one point of order. I think that whenever an elected official comes, normally we have a group conscience, or when I was sitting in your seat and the school board was here, and that 3-minute rule was a little bit, should have been released in order to talk to them about public safety. But anyways, what I'm really here for is, I know it's the political season and some letters have gone out by one of the chairpersons, and they were indicating that the reason we're cutting crossing guards and police officers or firemen was because of the generation station that you put in, Mayor. As you know, years ago, we were spending a lot of money burning sludge, and I've come here a couple times and asked what we are doing with our sludge. Instead of hauling it up to Rochester for $800,000, we should have had a digester, which I proposed when I sat in your chair. And I think it's between the cover material that you buy and the hauling of the sludge to Rochester, that's, you know, at least close to $1 million. And if you collect from your vendors, I think there was one vendor that owed you about $800,000 who utilizes the landfill. There's $1.6 million. So I think a little bit better business practices might be helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else desiring to be heard?
Art Wenzel, 23 Westlake Avenue. I do not own a business downtown, and I did not bring an entourage to read a 12-minute written statement either. As a person that's downtown every single day, most of these business owners are friends of mine, and I commute by walking and visit everybody every day. I've seen the influx of people from out of town. I've sat down at the river bend and lots of places and introduced people to the Seward home and other places about Theater Case. We have a great community here. The tax base itself has increased by quite a bit, just from seeing all the people coming in for the merry-go-round, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see that there's a need to charge from the 5 to 9 p.m. in parking. Everything's all set. The tax base, you got to be bringing extra money. I'd like to know what's going on here. Maybe there's a special deal you got going on with a Pango kickback or something like that. I don't know. Just theorizing. But my main concern is that this wasn't even printed in the paper as a brief or anything, that you left the public hanging here tonight. And I emailed and Facebooked, and there's quite a few people here tonight and businesses that county sent out letters to. That's the sad part of this whole situation tonight, bringing this up and not saying anything for the fact beforehand. And that really pisses me off.
Anyone else?
My name is Dave Arnold. I live at 29 Logan Street. I highly suggest that the City Council table the motion for parking and work with the bid group downtown in some kind of form so that everybody can have a situation that they're happy with. The second thing I have is on the SRO and the crossing guards. City Council was elected to run public safety in the city of Auburn. In my mind right now, in my opinion, they are derelict in their duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Anyone else? No one else? Very good. We'll close that portion of our meeting. And we'll move along to the approval of meeting minutes from August 29th. Is there a sponsor? Councilor Camardo, seconded by? No second. Councilor Graney. Discussion? Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Graney?
Yes.
Councilor Camardo?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Aye.
Councilor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
First presentation. Renee, are you going to do the introductions, or if you would, please?
Good afternoon. Renee Jensen, Community Development Planner with City of Auburn. I'm here tonight in regards to the Brownfields program. I have been involved in the program since 2010 when we received EPA money. And since then, we've had a community process for site selection. We have completed about 15 Phase 1 environmental site assessments. And most recently, we have completed 9 Phase 2 environmental site assessments. Tonight we have our consultants here, CHA and Barton Lujudis, to present their findings on each site. I will have CHA come up first. We have Chris Mullen and Megan Platt.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Chris Mullen, CHA. This is Megan Platt, CHA. Here to discuss with you the 5 Brownfield sites that we were assigned. Our Brownfield sites were broken into 2 groups. We had the first group where we conducted limited indoor air investigations, and we had a second group where we conducted subsurface investigations for soils. The first group was the 10 Genesee Street and the 16 South Street. At 10 Genesee Street, the Phase 1 had identified historical industrial uses used for electroplating, auto sales, and foundry work. Based on those ESA findings, recommendations came out to conduct indoor air quality investigations in an effort to evaluate whether contamination may have migrated into the building envelope. Additionally, asbestos, lead-based paint, and mold surveys were recommended. Our Phase 2 investigation consisted of a product inventory within the building to evaluate what materials may have been left behind, a collection of 2 indoor air samples in the basement of the site, and the findings were simply no exceedances to the New York State Department of Health air quality guidance parameters. On the second site, 16 South Street, the Phase 1 evaluated adjacent parcels utilized for industrial commercial use, with recommendations of the same indoor air quality investigations to evaluate vapor intrusion into the building envelope, and additionally asbestos, lead-based paint, and mold. The phase 2 that we had conducted was, again, product inventory to evaluate material that may have been left behind, collection of 2 indoor air samplings, and in this case, we had found parameters of contamination that were above the indoor air quality guidance set by Department of Health. Within the limited subsurface investigations at Frazee Street, we had found that in the phase 1, the historical use was junkyard, portions of paper and metal corporation, adjacent parcels occupied by the Auburn foundry, and the recommendations were simply to conduct subsurface investigations to further characterize any potential contamination. We installed 5 test pits, collected 5 samples, 1 from each of those test pits, and found contamination levels above the New York State DEC commercial standards for arsenic, cadmium, and copper. Megan can address the individual test pits.
At test pit 1, arsenic exceeded the commercial SCOs. At test pit 3, cadmium was an exceedance of the soil cleanup objective. And at test pit 4, it was copper. No constituents were detected in test pits 1 or 5 that exceeded the commercial soil cleanup objectives.
On North Division Street, the ESA indicated a carpet manufacturing company, and including bleach house and dye house within their operations. It also identified historic demolition and debris on the property and recommended the subsurface investigation. Here we collected 6 surface soil samples and found semi-volatile organic compounds and exceedance to the state commercial levels from DEC.
So the dibenzo H-anthracene was detected at the surface soil sample SS204, which is located at the northern portion of the property. All the other surface soil samples did not exceed the commercial soil cleanup objectives.
On the third property, 9 Owasco Street, this was the historic operation of the Auburn Woolen Mill and manufactured gas plant, the Bowen Manufacturing Company. Adjacent parcels were occupied by gasoline stations that had documented spills. Demolition debris existed on this site as well, and the recommendations were again subsurface investigations. Installation of 4 soil borings and 9 test pits with the collection of 17 soil samples identified semi-volatile organic compounds, cadmium, copper, arsenic above the commercial levels associated to the DEC cleanup standards.
These exceedances were detected in 2 test pits. The first test pit, TP 108, is located on the southern portion of the site on the eastern side of the river. Arsenic was exceeded at that location. The other location was TP 109, which is on the northwestern portion of the property, and there cadmium, copper, and the semi-volatile dibenzo anthracene were detected at concentrations exceeding the commercial SCOs.
So we kept it simple and straightforward and brief as we could. So if there's questions, we're more than happy to entertain them.
What is dibenzo? It's reflected in 2 different properties. So.
Dibenzo is a common semi-volatile organic compound and is usually associated to tars and things of that nature. So typically you find it as compounds.
Petroleum-based products and lubricants.
Anything else, Council?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Greg Lesniak with Barton and LaJudas at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Quill and council members. Barton and LaJudas was awarded 4 sites, and they vary in complexity from relatively simple with environmental conditions to something a little bit more complex. These are the 4 sites we were awarded to do Phase 2 investigations on. And our Phase 2 investigations were based on work plans that were prepared and approved by the EPA, and they specified boring locations, sampling, and what sample analysis was required. I do have a lot of slides here. Not all the slides are included in the handouts, just for brevity. The first site I'd like to talk about is 42 Wadsworth Street. And this is actually a very pretty site at the end of Wadsworth Street. And our work focused on the footprint of 2 manufacturing buildings that were on the southern portion of the site near the end of Wadsworth Street. And basically, that's going to be in, I'm pointing it the wrong way. It's going to be in this area. And again, here's the end of Wadsworth Street, and here's the river. What we identified in our sampling locations was a small area of petroleum-impacted soils. The concentrations were below cleanup standards for petroleum compounds, but we did identify a handful of metals exceeding the most stringent standard, but these levels do not exceed the next standard that we would look at, which would be residential. So these are very low concentrations. We did have one sample that had a concentration of arsenic that exceeded the commercial and industrial use standard. The groundwater concentrations at this site, we installed 3 monitoring wells, and the groundwater was very good at 42 Wadsworth Street. The only thing that exceeded was some minor metals that we detect, naturally occurring metals. So 42 Wadsworth Street, really the only concern there is that one arsenic sample. There's no impetus to go and investigate that at this time, but prior to the development, we'd want to study the volume of soil or fill material that has the arsenic in it. New York State DEC is involved with the project because when we ran into that petroleum impacted soil, we did call them, and that there is a spill case open on that property. So based on the volume of the arsenic impacted soil, a couple of cleanup techniques prior to development that could occur is actually just dig that area up if it's small in size, or possibly there could be a cap installed, a parking lot installed over that area. The next site is 2 through 38 Wadsworth Street, and that's right adjacent to the 42 Wadsworth. This is 42 Wadsworth Street, and this is the 2 through 38 Wadsworth Street. And our borings, our studies focused in this area, and that's where in 1983, 86, and 1990, the DEC had spent a decent amount of time and effort to look at a petroleum release that impacted water, and they had basically had oil on the water surface and along the bedrock surface in that area. So our borings, again, done in that area, we ran into petroleum impacts in those borings. However, they were at concentrations, again, below cleanup standards in both the soil and in the water. We did have one hit for PCBs, slightly over the most stringent use standard, but it's actually at such a low concentration, it's below the residential standard. So there's not really There's no need to clean that up depending on what the site use is going to be. Again, the groundwater at this site did not have metals or did not have hazardous metals or petroleum compounds in it. There could be some limited additional investigation, and that would be basically in this area where we did test pits but did not collect samples according to the work plan. That may need to be looked at prior to site development. The DEC is involved with this site as well because of the petroleum impacts that were identified. Back in the 1990s, DEC installed a remedial system, basically a drain and an oil water separator on the property. There's currently oil in the oil water separator. It may have been there for many, many years, just sitting there. But I think DEC may require us to pump out that oil water separator and then monitor it periodically to see if any oil is coming back into it. So the petroleum impacts here, again, we're below cleanup guidelines, but because they have a nuisance odor and they're basically stained, we can't just take that off-site without some approval. So if there's going to be deep excavations on this property, that's going to have to be factored into the site development. Okay, a larger site that we did was 4155 Washington Street, and that is just south of the prison. This is Washington Street. Here's the Owasco outlet flowing this way. And the bulk of the site is currently a clean or hard fill area used by the city. And of course, the concern here was the former footprint of the Dunn McCarthy industrial buildings. And most of our investigation was done in the footprint of the old buildings. In this area, there's a feature called the former oil house, and we did several borings there, and we did several borings in an area known as the engine room. The borings in both of those locations did not show significant levels of petroleum impacts. What we did identify was in the fill material, there are levels of metal, there's metal concentrations and several semi-volatile concentrations over various standards, including the restricted residential standard, the commercial use standard, and some isolated areas where the industrial use standard was exceeded.
Before you move on, let me
Yes.
ask you, just ask you a question. How is that going to be, you said the fill that was brought into the parking lot, I would assume, is
Okay.
showing high concentrations of certain chemicals?
So the bulk of this site, where the hard fill is going on right now, that's recently deposited. There was not concerns in the work plan for us to sample that. That's assumed to be not impacted. But in the footprint of the old building, that fill has been there for a significant amount of time. The building itself was partially demoed in place, I believe, and the fill material is like an ash, cinders, and slag.
So you didn't test the parking lot at all?
No, no. And again, we did our test pits and our soil borings in areas where the EPA agreed would be the most likely areas to identify contamination.
Well, the fill deposit on the parking lot would be somewhat barriered, would it not?
Would be, excuse me?
Would have it, the natural barrier, or a barrier of the parking lot pavement to impede the migration.
Well, yeah, it could, yes. Most of the concerns were more historic in nature, the historic building, industrial building, and the fill materials.
A normal, or the obvious remediation for the parking would be to remove all the fill off the parking area surface. Would that not be true? Thank you.
Well, so there's a large volume of fill material on top of bedrock, basically where the former Dunn McCarthy buildings
No, it's
stood.
blacktop. It was a blacktop
Okay.
parking lot.
Okay, well, most of the blacktop parking lot is under a significant amount of hard fill recently deposited. So I don't know that that's a concern. or the EPA identified that as a concern.
So they did not think that was a concern?
No, they recently
because
posited.
So I remember being told in the past that that was going to be a major concern.
Maybe from a constructability standpoint, I do not.
No, it was said that the soils would be tested, the fill that was brought in.
Okay.
So that there wasn't any
Right.
possibility of any problems with the fill that was brought in, and the city assuming costs to take all that fill out and deposit it in a safe environment.
Well, you can see where we did do our test pits and sampling. Basically, the bulk of the site has had samples collected from it.
So I guess the question is, how come we didn't test the parking lot?
The work plans we implemented were, again, negotiated by another consultant and approved by the EPA. So we executed the work plans that were agreed to.
So could that come around and bite us if we did not test that?
So you're saying that the recently deposited large, I mean, most of what I saw on the parking lot was concrete, large.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that.
We were told at one time maybe railroad ties were discarded in that and covered.
Well, you have no idea what was put in
Yeah,
there.
it's been covered so many times.
Well, we fully penetrated the fill in these test pits here, and we didn't identify railroad ties. Most of it was concrete, broken concrete, brick, and ash, which was fairly representative of what we saw at the rest of the site.
I guess I just don't understand why we're not testing the whole site if we're going to try to do something with the site and make it marketable down the road, is where my concern is.
Well,
it seems like we're sampling where the building was.
Right.
We understand there was problems there, but we want to make sure that the whole site is going to be tested.
Certainly, certainly. Well, based on the data we collected, again, we have metals over some cleanup guidelines. And let me proceed here. The groundwater was, again, similar to the other sites, was quite clean. We didn't have exceedances of concentrations for metals or petroleum compounds. But in some extent, we do agree that there are areas that have not been sampled. Primarily this area between the Wasco Outlet and the Raceway. A lot of that is historic fill material, construction and demolition debris. And then additional sampling. So prior to site development, we would probably want to do additional sampling to bracket the concentrations that exceed, particularly the industrial use standard. So site development here would be a process. It wouldn't happen all, immediately. The development would have to consider the exceedances of the soil standard. And the best way to do that, and this is a mechanism we use quite frequently, is with institutional and engineering controls. Basically a deed restriction saying you can't utilize a certain area of the property, or very commonly, you use a cap or a barrier to protect anybody that's on the site from the impacted material below it. So the volume of fill here is pretty extensive. So to remove all that material and then replace that area with clean fill would be a sizable project. So
I think where the confusion was, we were told for years that the fill we put in there had some hazardous material that may be true or may not be true.
And not only that, people were at their own discretion, were just dumping stainless in there at nighttime.
What was the initial intent of the city? To go down there, at least clean the property up so that some grass could grow so it looks presentable? But everybody said you couldn't get near it because the sampling had to take place, which you're moving ahead with that. But I think what we want to see happen is, that the council wants to see happen, is at least we could grow some grass down there and make it look, for the neighbors, look, clean and neat. Right now, it looks like a dumping yard down there.
It's a landfill.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're leading to, is if we can get to a stage where we can do something with it, just to make it look neat and clean.
Sure. I think we're close to that point. But what I'm hearing is maybe a little bit more sampling would be warranted
And ultimately, not only you don't want to make it look good for the intern, but you do want to have it available for potential redevelopment.
Well, that's the end result, absolutely.
End game, yeah.
Okay, I think I'll go on to the next site, and that had some similar concerns. The Pulaski Street site was a little bit more complex. This is a heavily wooded property. Pulaski Street is actually down here. Frank Smith Street is part of this property. There were some former industrial buildings present on this portion of the property. And the main feature here is this 5-acre parcel. This is basically a former limestone quarry, which has been filled in over the past 100 years with fill material, and that's characterized as ash, cinders, and slag fill material. So our investigation focused on looking for construction and demolition debris that may have been buried in this area, and there was a petroleum release identified in the northern part of the property a couple years ago. And again, so here's the northern part of this property. The property line's right here. And this is the Frank Smith Street and the railroad spur that's utilized by a Nucor steel distribution facility. The amount of construction and demolition debris, which is actually building materials, was not very extensive. It's just basically in this area. There is fill material, like I say, characterized as ash, cinders, and slag under the existing concrete slabs in this area. And in the former quarry area, every one of these borings had 18 to 20 feet of that fill material. We did identify the petroleum impacted soils in every one of these borings, but that was relatively deep, again at 18 to 20 feet right on top of bedrock. These concentrations did not come up over standard, so good news from a petroleum aspect. And the groundwater, the blue points are groundwater monitoring points, and the groundwater did not have petroleum impacts over standard. So the concern that we still have here is the metals concentrations that were identified in the fill material, very similar to the other sites where we have arsenic, copper, over the commercial and industrial use standard. Again, the groundwater was not heavily impacted at the site, below cleanup concentrations. This is a cross-section line that we did from point A on the west portion of the site down to the railroad spur. And that kind of shows the profile of the site. So there's a large amount of fill material in the old quarry area, and the petroleum impacts we identified is right along the bottom of that interval. Okay, so Pulaski Street is a large area of the fill material, that former quarry. No sampling has really been done on that. So that really needs to be evaluated to a larger degree. The water quality, downgradient from that fill area seems to warrant additional investigation. And we did identify one underground storage tank on the property that we would like to do geophysics on and identify if there's one tank there, is there more tanks right in that area. We think there's just one tank. And DEC is involved with the property because of the petroleum release back in 2011 and what we identified here. So anything we do going forward, we would want to sit down with DEC and discuss, make sure they're on board with what we're going to recommend. So the cleanup potential, the redevelopment potential of this site really still comes down to the implementation of these institutional and engineering controls. It certainly can be done. I mean, brownfield sites utilize these on a daily basis, and they do work to prevent any exposure from on-site personnel to the impacted material. And that's another representation of the site. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Questions, council?
One of the concerns I have now is it appears to me that you're almost just shy of recommending that we do further investigations on some of these sites. I would have to direct Christina to see what we could do to further promote the testing here and see how we can actually redevelop these properties and what would be a solution that we would have to implement to redevelop.
Are you talking about one specific site with the parking lot? Yeah.
And of course, the old Dunn and McCarthy site.
Sure.
These properties are just because of their location, they have a very large redevelopment potential, just that's impeded by this brownfield hazards. And if it appears to me that it does warrant some additional investigation.
So what would that entail as far as the time frame goes?
We would have to generate a work plan. We do believe that DEC's involvement on what we come up with for recommendations would be very important at this stage. And then make sure they're in agreement with what we intend on doing. And then we'd have to talk with you as far as available funding. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Public announcements.
Just have a few meeting announcements. On Monday, September 23rd, the zoning board will meet at 7 p.m. And city council meets again Thursday, the 26th at 6 p.m. And jumping forward to the following week, on October 1st, the planning board meets at 6:30. Human Rights Commission meets on Wednesday, the 2nd at 5 p.m. Civil Service meets on October 3rd at 3 p.m. And that's it.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
Mayor and Council, I just have one item. I sent you an email about our revolving loan funds. Just as background, the city has 3 revolving loan fund programs, one for sidewalks, one for sewers, and one for water. And those are available to homeowners. They're 6% interest rate, 5-year payback. They're applied to the property tax bill. So as a revolving fund, they were seeded with some money. That money gets expended, it gets repaid over the period of the loan and helps to restore the fund. 2 of the funds are at risk of overspending right now. What's happened, the demand for these programs has grown, the cost to do them obviously has grown over the years. So what we did in a staff meeting, we discussed putting some caps this year on the amount of money that we would make available to those funds. For the sidewalk fund, we would cap it at $200,000. That should allow us to, at the end of the year, evaluate this again and perhaps be able to maintain the funding at that level indefinitely into the future. For the water fund, we don't recommend any changes at this time. It seems to be funded adequately, and the repayment seems to be covering the expenditures. The sewer fund is a little different. This is primarily for sewer laterals. They tend to be fairly expensive projects, and so the money doesn't go quite as far. Our discussions at this point, we recommended capping that at $30,000. We're today at a $19,000 deficit. In other words, we've committed more to that fund than we actually have right now, but over the course of the year, we expect to recoup about $50,000 or $55,000. So the additional $30,000, as the year progresses, we should recoup enough to get that to a zero balance rather than a deficit. when we did this, we had not looked at what we'd committed, and as it turns out, we have committed that $30,000 already to existing projects. So the sewer revolving loan fund doesn't have any money to lend for the balance of the year unless we can find some additional funds to recapitalize that. So I just wanted to report on that in case you have constituents that are using these funds, and we advise them that there might be some limitations on them.
Doug, I just have one thing I'd like you to follow up on this brownfields assessment and give us an update. I thought we were going to be farther ahead in a couple of these sites than we actually are, but if you would give us an update on where we need to go and what we need to do, please.
Councilors, we do have 2 items on the agenda early on that are follow-up items on brownfields, so those may address some of your concerns, but certainly
Well, the ones that we just discussed, right. I don't think are on there. Plaskey Street is, but the other 3 sites are not, and especially the Dunham McCarthy site, because I've had many, many calls about that site, so I think we need to keep on top of that and see what next steps need to happen there. Please, that's all.
All right, thank you. I'll say Councilor Camardo.
Yes, I am, thank you.
Presentation, petition, communication,
None.
seeker resolution. Ordinance number 6 of 2013, amending Chapter 285, Vehicle and Traffic Sections 285-10, 11, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 24, sponsored by Councilor Smith, seconded by Councilor Camardo.
Mayor, can I ask that this be tabled? I'm going to ask council if this can be tabled. I've received many phone calls, and many people today came to the podium and did not know about the parking situation in downtown, so we could get some proper information out to the residents and to the business owners in downtown Auburn, and that we table it for at least a couple weeks, or whenever Doug feels that he has properly communicated with the business owners in downtown.
Councilor Smith, did you?
Is it just over that section, section 28519, or is the whole ordinance overall?
Well, I'm talking about the downtown situation.
All right, so that's section 28519.
Yeah.
I'm more in favor of eliminating that portion of it, where we would extend the time. All right, so we can go on with the rest of the resolution, but just eliminating that portion of it.
So we're going to table that portion of it? Is that what you're
saying?
Or just eliminate it?
Okay, yeah, just let's back up a second. We have a sponsor and a second for the entire resolution. And Councilor, was that in the form of a motion to table this?
Yes, I made a motion that we table it, and I would amend that just to table this section for downtown, including the parking downtown.
All right, so there's,
Do you want to amend it? I don't think you can just amend it. You can't
That
table.
wasn't on the floor. I'm just amending my
okay.
proposal is what I'm doing, or motion, yes.
table it.
Yep.
So I think it might be easier just to get it on the floor, discuss it, and then decide to amend section 28519. Is that correct, Councilor Rossi?
Yes,
That'd be easy.
it's up to the council.
I got a motion on the floor to take it,
Yeah.
to table it, so that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, so
Please.
you want to table the entire,
Table just the parking in downtown Auburn.
all right.
Well-
It's a section of what? What's the section?
I don't think you can just take that one section out and
Okay, then I
table it.
want to table the whole thing.
Yeah,
then.
I think
Okay,
if you're
that's
going
fine.
to table it, the whole ordinance.
Yep.
Amend it.
You want to table entire, all right,
Yeah.
there's a motion on the floor to table ordinance number 6 by Councilor Camardo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's a second to table. Discussion? No, there's no discussion.
Just for clarification.
Please.
If we don't table this, we can still.
Right.
that one
We can
section.
address the section.
We can address that section.
You can't table that section.
Yeah, and then you would have to, that's fine, but then you would have to amend the ordinance
Right.
off the floor.
And that's what we're looking to do.
But I would just caution that if there's anything else in the ordinance that anyone has any issues with, that we should deal with all of them together rather than piecemeal and bring it back.
But that was my original question. Is there a problem just with that one section, or is there a question with the whole thing as a
We're having
whole?
discussion on a motion, you can't, and to table.
Yeah. Take the vote on the motion first.
Motion to table entire resolution. Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
I'm going to motion to table for tonight.
You're saying aye?
Aye.
Yes, yes.
Table.
Counselor Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
No.
Counselor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Yes.
Tabled.
Council, I would request that you talk with Mr. Selby, Mr. Rossi, where you have concerns, Counselor.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we should eliminate that portion that's in the ordinance. I think Mr. Diablo said the best. There's some aspects of this that would benefit many people, some of the businesses in downtown, and there's some aspects of it that would hurt others. And we are seeing a good thing in the revitalization of downtown.
Council, I'm going to bring you back because we already tabled this.
Right, but
So
can I just...
I'd like to carry that into other business, if you wouldn't mind.
All right, just one last comment. If when we go bring this into other business, or excuse me, when do we plan to bring this back to the table for a vote? Do we want to go 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
All right, so council's okay to bring this back 2 weeks?
Well, I said whenever Doug feels that he can communicate with business owners downtown, that's up to you.
Yeah, I think the main objection is the hours.
It is.
And what we would do is, I mean, we don't eliminate the whole section, we just go back to where it was, 9 to 5.
Which I think would have been the easiest thing to do, but...
But I would appreciate it if there are other sections of the ordinance as you read through it that you would like to amend or change, to please get that information to us at your earliest convenience.
All set.
Authorize the expenditure of $36,350 for initial Phase 2 environmental site assessment investigation at a city-owned parcel 1-15 Pulaski Street. And whereas the draft Phase 2 environmental site assessment has identified the potential for off-site contaminants affecting the city-owned parcel at 1-15 Pulaski Street, which requires change order number 1 in the amount of $40,380 in order to complete additional site investigation under the Phase 2 Environmental Site Assessment Program. And whereas U.S. EPA has announced the availability of brownfield cleanup grant funding and the petroleum contaminants at 1-15 Pulaski Street would be eligible for cleanup funding, and change order number 1 would also include the amount of $6,000 required to complete an analysis for brownfield cleanup alternatives, which is required for brownfield cleanup grant application to U.S. EPA. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Auburn, New York, 1, that the Auburn City Council does hereby authorize award of change order number 1 for additional Phase 2 environmental site assessment investigation for a cost of $40,380, and the completion of an analysis of brownfield cleanup alternatives for a cost of $6,000 to Barton and LaJudas. And 2, the change order number 1 will cost an aggregate amount of $46,380 and will be charged to the designated capital account entitled Downtown Brownfield Program. And 3, that this resolution will take effect immediately upon its approval.
Council? Councilor Camardo?
Doug, there's no local monies being, just so people know, there's no local monies being spent in this.
This is federal EPA brownfield money. In fact, that's why the sampling plan has to be approved by EPA.
Covered by grant.
Yeah.
Please call the roll.
Councilor Graney?
Yes.
Councilor Camardo?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Aye.
Councilor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Change order resolution number 110 of 2013, authorizing additional Phase 2 ESA and analysis of brownfield cleanup alternatives for hazardous sites at number 10 and 16, 10 Genesee Street, 16 South Street. Councilor Camardo, second by Councilor Rozika.
Change order resolution number 110 of 2013 by Councilor Camardo, seconded by Councilor Rozika. Whereas the City of Auburn has been awarded U.S. Environmental Protection Agency brownfield assessment grants in the amount of $200,000 for hazardous contaminants, and whereas the City of Auburn has successfully completed a community participatory process that resulted in the identification of 21 hazardous and petroleum brownfield sites within the City of Auburn, as well as completion of 13 Phase 1 environmental site assessments and 9 draft Phase 2 environmental site assessments. And whereas City Council Resolution number 31 of 2013 authorized the expenditure of $6,100 $136.60 for initial Phase 2 environmental site assessment investigation at hazardous sites 10 Genesee Street and 16 South Street. And whereas the draft Phase 2 environmental site assessment has identified the need for asbestos renovation surveys, lead paint surveys, and industrial hygiene surveys at 10 Genesee Street and 16 South Street, which requires change order number 2 in the amount of $24,400 in order to complete additional site investigation under Phase 2 environmental site assessment program. And whereas change order number 2 would include the amount of $9,600 to complete an analysis for brownfield cleanup alternatives, which is required for U.S. EPA brownfield cleanup grant application. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Auburn, New York, that 1, the Auburn City Council does hereby authorize award of change order number 2 for additional Phase 2 environmental site assessment investigation for a cost of $24,400 and the completion of analysis of brownfield alternatives for a cost of $9,600 to CHA Consulting, Inc., and that change order number 2 will cost an aggregate amount of $34,000 and will be charged to the designated capital account entitled Downtown Brownfield Program, and 3, that this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its approval.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yes, Christina, could I ask you to approach? Now, I'm going to qualify by saying I am a member of a group that does presentations in support of the Shines Theater Restoration Project, and that I fully am disclosing this, and this will, I feel that what my questions I'm going to be asking are within the scope and betterment in regards to the a vote here. Now, I'm concerned about 10 Genesee Street. Has there been a plan identified for that property at all, or is this going to help it basically market it? Is this more for the resale of it, for redevelopment, or has the owner got maybe he's going to try and sell it, or he's got a redevelopment plan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 10 Genesee Street. Staff, because it's not a city-owned parcel,
Right.
we don't have control over how we're marketing or dealing with the building. What we do have control over is the fact that there are identified hazardous contaminants on site which are hindering redevelopment capabilities for that site. This next phase of the Phase 2 process, doing the asbestos investigation, the lead, and then ultimately doing the brownfield cleanup alternatives plan, is basically the last step in the Phase 2 process. So at which point the city is basically finishing up any of our public involvement at that site. Cleanup process is all on the private property, or it's on the property owner's responsibility. So because we don't own those, this is as far as we can go to help those property owners.
Okay, but also in regards to South Street, and this is one of the reasons why I had requested a plan, is back in January 28th of 2010, Financial Resolution 16 of 2010.
Okay.
There was a transfer of account HA8020.440.CG, Build Now, New York, in the amount of $30,000 to account HA820-440-DO, and it was for the Shine Theater, in the amount of $13,434.40. What was that account exactly for?
The city in the past had acted as a pass-through for Environmental Protection Fund or state grant funding for the Shines Theater project. I don't know if council was actually here at this point, but when there was the transfer going on of the Shines Theater project early around maybe 2000, we had actually taken ownership of that point, had actually been part of the chain of title and custody of the property, then transferred it over to the Arts Council, at which point it was my understanding that the city would remain involved, at least during that time and help with either, grant management, helping to just pass through, make them available and eligible for grant funding. So those were pass-through grant applications. They weren't actual city dollars that were going into the project.
Well, this was carried over on a tax liability in the, on the forms, and I was led to believe, I think Doug led me to believe that this transfer was going to forego the debt that the Shine Theater was going to owe to the city of Auburn regarding this grant. Is that correct?
I could not say. It's not my resolution.
Doug, you sent me this, and that's what you said in the emails, that this was to basically forgive this debt that the Arts Council owed the city of Auburn.
I'm not familiar with what you're looking at. I do remember the issue coming up and me providing some documents to you, but
that's what I got in front of me, is that document.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
Well, like I say, it must have been a debt owed to the city, because it is on their tax form under the other liabilities schedule. So basically, the city of Auburn forgave this debt. Is that correct?
I
would have to assume that statement that you made to me was correct.
I want to research it before I said anything official, but I think you're probably right.
Well, that being said, that's one reason why I asked for a plan here, is because of this involvement where, to me, on the surface, that the city lost the benefit of a little over $13,000 to a bad debt. However, I am supportive of this project. It needs to move forward in order for some renovation here, but I wanted to make it very clear as to why I thought a plan was necessary. Obviously, there's some recent evidence that they're actually trying to get some funding through appears to be fundraising activities that I've seen. So I'm fully supportive, but I wanted to explain the position of why I thought a plan was necessary. And that's the only thing. Is other than this, I do feel it's necessary to move this forward. Even my personal opinion is, yes, we need to move this forward, but also as a city councilor, not only do we need to move it forward for the betterment of the city, but it is a building that's prominently downtown, and we need to do something with it.
Thank you, Christina. Anything further, council? Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
Yes.
Counselor Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Zika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Council Resolution Number 111 of 2013, authorizing the adoption and enactment of the fiscal year 2013-17 through 17 City of Auburn Capital Improvement Plan. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Rozika, seconded by Councilor Graney.
Council Resolution Number 111 of 2013 by Councilor Rozika, seconded by Councilor Graney. Whereas the City of Auburn, New York is authorized and empowered under the New York General Municipal Law, Article 5, Section 99-G, to undertake the planning and execution of a capital program. And whereas the Auburn City Council desires to implement a capital improvement program to provide for the maintenance and improvement of public infrastructure in support of the city's vision and goals outlined in the city's comprehensive plan. And whereas the Auburn City Council finds that it is in the best interest of the city to adopt and approve the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2013 through 2017 to ensure the city achieves its desired outcomes for a prosperous and sustainable community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Auburn City Council of the City Council of the City of Auburn, New York, number one, the city hereby adopts and enacts fiscal year 2013 through 2017 capital improvement program, and two, that this resolution shall take effect immediately after its adoption and approval.
Councilor Camardo.
Now, Doug, is this just a guide for the city, or is because, as you know, I've been very concerned. This is $67 million, I believe, investment over the next 4 years or 5 years, which I think it's very important that the city plans for the future, but I'm very concerned on, as many municipalities across the state are concerned about taking on any additional debt because we have some financial problems that we're looking at. So I want to make sure that there's no obligation to this, that we might have to change things as we move our fiscal problems get worse instead of better. I hope we can get better, but we need to look to the future.
Yes, Councilor Camardo, you're correct. It's a guidance document. It helps us organize the projects, prioritize them, schedule them, but it doesn't make a commitment to actually execute the projects. So this is partly a wish list, partly a planning document, and as funds become available, we bring projects back individually to the council. I'd also add that this is an annual review. It's a living document. So although we say 5 years, since we originally drafted this about 4 months ago, and it's been on the website since then for public comment, it's evolved a little bit even in that period of time. And with the council's permission, I'd just ask Christina to come forward and tell you a couple of the highlights of this and maybe a few of the changes that have occurred since it was drafted.
Please go ahead, Christine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for considering the next fiscal year 2013-2017 City of Auburn Capital Improvement Program. I definitely would like to thank City Council and the Mayor and Doug Selby and senior staff in helping to prepare this and providing helpful comments in regards to its layout and the information that is communicated to the public about what we're doing with our capital funds. Since I presented in May, there are a few changes in particular to the transportation and pedestrian section that starts on page 43. Since that time, and this has been in the newspaper and the media, the City of Auburn was notified that Federal Highway was implementing the new MAP 21 legislation from Congress. As such, that new legislation is geared towards funding preservation road projects, so milling and paving, not necessarily road reconstruction projects. Our city engineer has been fabulous over the years in getting us road reconstruction money. However, we must have stood out and said, we have all these wonderful projects going on, and Auburn's doing so great, and unfortunately, we're going to take 2 of those projects away. So at this point, the reconstruction project that was slated for Osborne Street from Loop Road to Lake Avenue, and then South Street, which we actually just did that wonderful walk for Harriet Tubman on, from Metcalf Drive down to the city line, is also being removed. So staff has been very diligent in trying to reach out to our electeds and state agencies and explaining how important these projects are to our community and our road program every year. But I think that they've already got those monies tied up elsewhere. So we're doing the best we can. They're going to be implementing that new state transportation improvement plan as of October 1st, and right now it does not include those 2 projects. So they amend the plan throughout the year. We're going to keep working on it, see if there's ways we can get those reconstruction monies back, but not all is lost. As Billy is very good as our wheeler and dealer, he did get 5 new projects added to the upcoming state transportation improvement plan. Those are outlined in the document. So we have some good preservation projects coming up for milling and paving within the city.
Now, what state officials did you talk to, especially about South Street? Because that's something that really needs to happen, and it was under their guidance and their recommendations. Who did you?
All of them.
All of them.
I've been knocking on everyone's door. We've gone to the governor's office. We've gone to Joan McDonald's office. She's the commissioner of DOT. All of our local electeds, our state electeds, our federal electeds. We didn't leave any stone unturned.
What kind of response did you get from them?
Very, very supportive, extremely. Both the senators' offices, DeFrancisco's and Nozzolio, have written letters. They've made personal phone calls.
Have you had to follow up with them? Because usually they like to know what's...
Oh, definitely,
okay.
Yep. And we're keeping them advised. We're using the governor's Central New York regional representative. he's been very helpful in trying to make this a important point for the governor and for the commissioner's office. So,
Do you know why they pulled State Street, or South Street? I've got State Street in my mind, but...
they're large projects. We're multi-million-dollar projects. So what has happened is the region has only been allowed 20% of the available funds every year for reconstruction projects. And then other 80% now has to be preservation type projects, so culvert replacements and mill and fill and that type of thing. The metropolitan planning organizations, the MPOs, which is in Onondaga County, they have their first crack at that funding. So they're able to put in what they feel is most important, and then the remaining 4 counties that are not part of the MPO, we're fighting for whatever's left.
And how did the state respond? Because of the problems we had with South Street were a lot of their problems, that they recommended certain pavement and so on and so forth. And
well, the repaving project is still there.
Okay.
So we're still going to be repaving. So we actually are going to be doing that next summer. So yes, next summer. And that'll be from William Street, Lincoln Street to Metcalf. So we're still going to be repaving within that section. It's the section from there to the city line that we were hoping to reconstruct, and it's the reconstruction money that we do not have.
And Bill, while you're here, do you have any plan to get the street lights out there repainted or refixed?
Yeah, that's part of the project.
That's part of it? Okay,
yes.
good.
Sidewalks, minor replacement of sidewalks, and we're looking at the water line as well.
Good.
Bill, can you comment on that South Street project? I know that goes from the traffic light out to the Harriet Tubman home, which was going to get sidewalks and green space.
The reconstruction part?
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's...
we got
Basically, it was priorly approved to go from Metcalf to the city line. It would be a full reconstruction project, just like we've done with East Genesee Street, West Genesee, the York Street, just same type of project. We would have reconstructed the road to modern standards. We do have Harriet Tubman. Hopefully, it'll be a national park. We thought, we're really surprised that they did pull the project, but as Christina said, they changed the philosophy. Before, the money was spent for capital improvements, larger projects, and that was under the safety lieu. Now with this MAP 21, the goals are preservation and then and a little bit of money going to beyond preservation. We just happen to be in the mix for most of our money being under the beyond preservation. But like Christina's been trying very hard. We haven't given up yet. Hopefully we'll go there. Now the repaving is, like she says, we'll go down here and we will mill and fill the existing pavement. We will address all of the streetlight poles, make sure they're all well painted. They've changed the standards a little bit on the handicap ramps on the corner. We'll bring those all up to modern standards. Any deficient sidewalks, which there's only a few between the here and there, we'll address those few slabs. So, we'll bring it back to the way it was when it was reconstructed. So it really looks spiffy again.
There's quite a few problems with those sidewalks, Bill. If you take a walk down through there, there's quite a few problems.
But I mean, there is some spalling, and a lot of that, especially more toward the corners or the driveways where the salt eats at it. But we'll address all that.
Okay.
Bill, so it was my understanding that South Street got put off another year till 2014.
No, we're still going. We're in the
schedule?
design right now. We have, and I hate to digress just a whisker here, but we're still doing the Walnut Street culvert, the traffic signals. We're doing like 5 intersections, and the South Street repaving. All 3 of those projects are all in various phases of the design. We're either at the 90% level or almost to the total design, and all 3 of them should be starting next year. Those 3 projects are still going full blast. It's just the other 2 got
Just from
stalled.
Metcalf to the city line.
Yeah.
So Bill, so the priority is the preservation part of this instead of the reconstruction, I take it?
Yeah, that's, the state took it upon themselves that they're supposed to comply with whatever the federal guidelines are at the time. MAP 21 is their policy is preservation for most of their money, with a little bit with beyond preservation. Safety lieu, the older program that these programs were approved on, there's master contracts out there with the federal government, and we're really surprised that they're basically not honoring their previous master agreements. And that's why I think Christina has had such good support from all our elected officials there.
So I take it the ones you listed are the priority projects for preservation right at the moment.
Yes. And we got 5 others that we've picked.
That'll be in line or in
Right.
queue.
Yeah.
Right.
And it'll be the rest of the traffic signals and some culverts and a couple paving.
I know the traffic signals, my personal opinion is that they should be kind of bumped up because they seem to be, we've got some that are even out on.
I mean, we got some old steel poles that had a 40-year design life, and they're 60 years old, so.
Yeah, they're definitely
in need
end
of
of their useful life.
replacement.
Yeah.
Any more questions on transportation? And very quickly, new section this year, we had talked about this back in May, is the section on vehicle replacement. We have not bonded for any major capital vehicle replacement since 2010. DPW, they do a really awesome job keeping our vehicle fleet going, but we are definitely at a point where we need to do some replacement for the vehicles that they use, particularly our 10-wheel dump trucks, a street sweeper to keep our streets clean. So please take a look at that section, because next week we'll be bringing forward a bond ordinance to you for consideration for the replacement of our vehicles for 2013, 2014.
Now, Doug, you sent out a proposal that basically involved leasing of some of these larger pieces
Actually, and I'll talk about this under other business, but it was a fleet management leasing program, but for vehicles 1 ton and under, so automobiles, small trucks.
But I'm talking about like the small pickup trucks.
Yes, yes.
And
We do not include the small pickup trucks in the capital plan. We've put those into the operating budget.
so anything on 1 ton and under is what's basically.
That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about, and we'll talk a little bit more towards the end of the meeting about.
Okay.
Thanks, Christina.
Sure, thank you.
Further discussion? Clerk, if you call the roll, resolution number 111.
Counsel Graney?
Yes.
Counsel Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Board Resolution Number 112 of 2013, awarding a bid for the installation of sidewalks and handicap ramps on city-owned properties. Do we have a sponsor? Counselor Camardo, seconded by Counselor Smith.
Award Resolution Number 112 of 2013 by Counselor Camardo, seconded by Counselor Smith. Whereas the City of Auburn has advertised for bids for the installation of sidewalks and handicap ramps to be installed on city-owned properties, and whereas on September 10th, 2013, bids were opened for this project and the following bid was received. Concrete Slipform, Inc., Canastota, New York, $184,913. And whereas it is necessary for the Auburn City Council to approve the award of this single and low bid for the project to Concrete Slipform, Inc. in the amount of $184,913. Now therefore be it resolved that the Auburn City Council does hereby award the single and low bid for the 2013-2014 City Sidewalk Program for the installation of sidewalks and handicap ramps on city-owned properties to Concrete Slipform, Inc. of Canastota, New York, in the amount of $184,913, the cost of which will be charged to the appropriate account, and be it further resolved that the mayor is hereby authorized to execute any and all documents in order to finalize the award of this bid.
City Manager, anything to add?
I have nothing to add.
Bill, the major question, and I think it's very obvious, is why we only had one bid.
Well, we advertise it the same way that we did the other bids. We get the best participation on the CDBG because everything is, they do whole streets. This one here is a little bit more piecemeal, so some of the outside contractors that you don't usually get quite as good participation at this one. We usually get 2-3 bids. I mean, we had 4 I think, different companies, and all the concrete vendors that have been bidding with us throughout this year, they're all knowledgeable of this. And of course, we came here before and asked council for advertisement, so, plus we advertise in the newspapers, plus we notify a lot of the local concrete contractors that this one is coming about. So, I mean, they've had, a good 6 weeks worth of notice. We just, at this particular one, we got one bid. This bid here was a very excellent bid. I think our estimate, we were shooting for about $230,000 to $240,000 worth of work. Bid came in at $184,000. It's very, very good. And this contractor, Concrete Slip Form, we've worked with them in the past. Came right in, did an excellent job, knocked off the program in a record amount of time. Did very good cleanup work. Have very few complaints. So they're an excellent company, and look forward to working with them.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm a bit surprised that we had only received one.
Yeah, so was I.
Yeah.
So we have worked with this company before?
Yes, we have.
There's some history, yeah.
They're out of Canastota, New York. Okay.
Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
Yes.
Counselor Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Agreement Resolution Number 113 of 2013, authorizing the city to apply for a grant for New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services Office of Counterterrorism. To his spot, Councilor Rozika, second by Councilor Smith.
Council Resolution Number 113 of 2013 by Councilor Rozika, seconded by Councilor Smith. Whereas the City of Auburn Police Department and the Cayuga County Sheriff's Office are local and county law enforcement agencies with active tactical teams as part of their law enforcement operations. And whereas the City of Auburn acknowledges the importance of tactical teams as critical components of New York State's homeland security efforts, as they are frequently called upon to respond to many types of high-risk, active shooter and counterterrorism situations. And whereas through the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services Office of Counterterrorism have released a request for proposal for fiscal year 2013 Tactical Team Targeted Grant Program funding for which local and county law enforcement agencies are eligible to apply. And whereas the City of Auburn Police Department, as lead applicant in partnership with the Cayuga County Sheriff's Office, is interested in applying for grant funds to cover eligible equipment and training costs. And whereas this tactical team grant application will address 4 primary program objectives, which are: 1, advance tactical team capabilities; 2, participate in the DHS OBP SWAT capability analysis program; 3, encourage and support joint training among law enforcement agencies; and 4, promote regional partnerships. And whereas the City of Auburn and Cayuga County do not currently have the funding to pay for 100% of the equipment and training needed for the tactical teams, and it is necessary to apply for and obtain New York State grant funding assistance. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Auburn, New York, that 1, the mayor or authorized representative is authorized to submit a funding application to the New York State DHSES OCT in the amount of up to $100,000 for necessary equipment and training costs eligible under this grant program. 2, that the Auburn Police Chief is authorized to execute a notice of endorsement between the City of Auburn and Cayuga County as required for the submittal of the Regional Partnership Grant application. 3, that the mayor or authorized representative, upon notice of this funding award, is authorized to execute the grant contract and any reimbursement forms or necessary documents to complete the project. And 4, that the City Comptroller's Office is authorized and directed to create a city expense and revenue capital account to track project finances. 5, the resolution takes effect immediately upon its approval and adoption.
Also, the police chief is here with us. If you have any questions, I'm sure he's well qualified to answer them. Chief, please.
Chief, so everyone kind of has an idea of exactly what types of equipment you're looking for. Is it like body armors, things like this? You know, if you can elaborate on that.
Well, a lot of it's equipment that we have, but it's outdated, such as chemicals, gases. There's some electronic equipment we could use that would be beneficial to surveillance, recon type details. Phones, kind of throw phones if there is a barricaded system, or subject rather. So it's, and then it's for backfill on training, because the training is quite expensive. I'm not sure exactly what the sheriff's department's going to be asking for at this point in time, but it'll be similar. There's simunition rounds and stuff like that we can use for practice, along with our plans are to do some type of a sim house out at the training grounds where the fire department trains. It's supposed to be a joint training facility, so our plans are to do a sim house, which will be, for real quick, what that is it's a
training bed.
It's use of handguns, but they're not actual handguns, but rounds travel the same. They're marking cartridges, stuff like that. So it's very beneficial to the team and to patrol itself too. So this is all stuff that we can use.
Now, is the city the only one with a SWAT team, or does the county have a?
County has a SWAT team also.
Have we approached the two SWAT, maybe putting these two SWAT teams together? Because it seems like, to me, there's, well, one, there's not a huge demand for performance of SWAT team duties.
It's used more than you think.
Really?
It's used a lot more than you think. We probably use that team, I would say probably on an average once a month.
Really?
And you're probably using the officers for other duties other than just being on a team, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're regular patrol officers, so they're being.
How many team members are on this?
We've got 14 at the present. 14
members?
Yeah. I'm not sure what the sheriff's department is at this time. But when was it? I can't think of the exact time. I think it was March. I think it was March, April, early. I think it was March. We assisted, the sheriff's department had a barricaded suspect out on Westlake Road.
Yeah.
And he was firing off rounds towards, well, over the lake and towards some of the houses. So the sheriff's department called us, the sheriff called me and asked if we could assist, so we sent the team up there, and we were able, our team was able to quell the situation within a short period of time. So it's, like I said, it's used more than you think.
Plus, we're easier to mobilize as well, the city SWAT team.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all fairly local.
Yep.
Yeah, in this day and age, unfortunately, it's a consequence of the current.
It's a necessary evil.
Exactly.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks.
You call the roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
Yes.
Counselor Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Zika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Council Resolution Number 114 of 2013, declaring the former fire station situated at 5 Frederick Street as surplus property, and council permission to advertise the property for sale. We have a sponsor. Councilor Graney, second by Councilor Camardo.
Council Resolution Number 14, 2013, by Councilor Graney, seconded by Councilor Camardo. Whereas the City of Auburn is the owner of a premises at 5 Frederick Street, Auburn, New York, and uses the premises as Fire Station 2 and occupied by the Auburn Fire Department. And whereas the station was closed and was no longer used for an Auburn Fire Department purposes and has been leased to the to an ambulance company for a term of years, said lease having expired. And whereas it is the intention of the council to declare that said premises is surplus property owned by the City of Auburn, and the Auburn City Council permitting the advertisement for sale of the premises in order to relieve the city of the upkeep and maintenance of the premises and to receive a fair market value for the sale of the premises to be placed in the city's general fund. Now therefore be it resolved that the Auburn City Council does declare the former Fire Station Number 2 situated at 5 Frederick Street, Auburn, New York, to be surplus property, and granting authorization to the city manager to advertise the premises for sale.
Council, I have no intention of voting yes on this. We closed this fire station. There were 3 members of council presently that were on board at the time. There was no need to close that station. It was done as a retribution. The fire department is strapped for room. They do not have room. They do not have facilities. It's not the best station in the world, but it does help with their holding the many pieces of equipment that they do have. Dissimilar from the police department, their equipment is much larger. It needs to be readily available. We tried selling this a few years back. Because of the zoning, it was not sold, and we sat on it. Fortunately, we worked with our ambulance company. They leased it for a while, but now if we were to close that, we have no fallback position. If anything should happen for our fire department, they have no room for storage. They're cramped for what they have now. So, as they say, I do not plan on voting in favor of this resolution.
Could you give us some background on this, Doug? How's the property? I was told that it's going to be it's in need of a roof. Is that correct? And the general
Yeah, I understand
condition of it.
it will need a roof at some point.
And how's the condition of the property itself? I know it's been going on for a long
The chief
time.
is here, and he's far more familiar with the
one
condition
second.
of the building than I
How
am.
long has it been closed? Do you know offhand?
When did it close, Mayor?
4 years,
4
5
years.
years, something like that.
Chief? Just the condition of the building as it
The
sits
condition
today.
of the building as it stands right now, it does need some work. As some folks have mentioned in this forum before, these buildings kind of have a soul, and when you leave them unoccupied for a period of time, even with the heat on and things like that, they tend to deteriorate. So there are some issues with the building. It could use some walk-through doors. The roof, although it's not leaking to the extent that it leaks into the building, over the apparatus bay, the underlying insulation under the membrane is waterlogged at last report. So
You're talking quite a bit of money to update it. Is that what would you be saying?
if we were going to respond out of the building, we'd have an expenditure of, I would estimate, probably $20,000 to $30,000 to get the building up to snuff.
To do a roof also?
Yeah, yeah. It's a one-bay station, it's a very tiny roof, and it's not the entire roof of the building that needs attention right at the moment.
Now, that originally wasn't built as a fire station, it was built as a bomb shelter, I was told.
No.
No, it was built as a fire station with a bomb shelter as an ancillary use.
Now, how many trucks can you fit into that? Can you fit, I know it's very limited in structure and it's...
I can only fit one full-size fire apparatus into it, and even at that, I'm limited. My concern is, and I tried to express this in an email to all the council, is we have significant issues that concern me, and I would hope they concern you also, with our main fire station. I can go back in the record, I can go back in newspaper articles to the early 1990s when there was other gentlemen sitting in these positions, and they were concerned about the structural integrity of that main fire station. So we're talking 20-plus years, and we really haven't done anything of real significance. We had a rebuild of the floor in the early 1990s of the main fire station. We're starting to be plagued with some of the same problems again. When vehicles in the wintertime, when they get snow on them, when they back in and that snow melts, the police officers end up with showers in places they didn't expect to have showers in their facility in the basement. There are some issues that need to be addressed. The physical limitations of the main fire station, which was built in roughly 1930, have limited our ability in some cases to get all of the vendors to be able to put in bids on apparatus. That happened with our ladder trucks. Certain vendors were not able to even construct a truck that would fit into those small bays. The bottom line is this: we really need to sit down and devise a plan for the future for a fire station. And until we do that, I think it would be premature to get rid of this fire station. It allows us some flexibility. It allows us that if we have to rebuild the floor, which is, it's not an if we will, it's when we will. And in the past, when we did that in the early 1990s, we had to vacate half of the main fire station. If I had to do that today, I have really no place to put anything, but I could potentially put one engine up at that station and get by for a few months while we reconstruct the floor. Without that option, I'm literally left with that. No options other than at some point we may be forced to rent space someplace. So any revenue that is generated from the sale of this in the short term, we could likely eat up down the road as we try to deal with another situation.
Okay, Chief, we just approved this capital project form right here.
Yes.
Fire station is involved in that, a new centralized regional station. So I think at some point we should look at that. But for me, that station up there, it needs a lot of work. $20,000 for the roof is really low. I've been told $100,000 for the roof, so. I mean, it's something, asbestos, lead paint, something we really, I think we should get rid of.
And again, if we're looking down the future, if we're looking to modernize our fire department and right-size our fire department, and the chief mentioned looking at possibly creating a one-city firehouse that's centrally located, which many cities are doing. I believe it was Utica who just did that. It makes sense to sell this. If you want to look at all of our other buildings, I mean, the police department, that's a logistical nightmare, and how they had that whole setup where they bring in people who've been arrested. Look at the DPW garage. I mean, that looks like Hooverville, for crying out loud. The place is not conducive for working on any of the vehicles, and they have very little room. So there's many buildings, of course, in the fire department being one of them on Market Street that does need to be addressed. I think this is just one less building that is currently not in use as far as servicing calls. So why put another burden?
And to me, like you just said, that Market Street, I could see the police department utilizing that and going with a regional central command fire station someplace in the city.
I'll say again, I would ask you to hold off on the sale of this until we have that plan in place, until we know that we're not going to have any structural problems that cause us to vacate even partially the main firehouse.
And how long is that? What's your plan to get it? Because I don't see us putting any more money into Market Street other than probably eventually building a new facility, because it seems like we've been spending a lot of money and it hasn't been used in the best interest of the taxpayers. You know, there's been a lot of money spent on that floor down there, when years ago we probably should have looked at a new facility, that was right for the city, but so be it. But how long are you predicting something like this? You're looking at doing repairs and things like that, because the longer we wait on it, winter's right around the corner. I know many people have asked me that we should be doing something with that property. It either should be sold and put on the tax rolls, or something should happen with it. So I want to know what's some kind of timeline here. I'm prepared to move forward, but I'd like to see us at least get some kind of minimum bid out of that property where we're just not giving it away. I would assume we'd have to approve a purchase price on that coming back, wouldn't we? John or Doug?
We would bring it back to the council, yes.
Doug, what's the financial burden that building has for the city right now? I know we're heating it, it's got power.
I think that's primarily is just keeping it from freezing in the winter, isn't that it,
It's got to be
Chief?
very minimal. When it was closed, if I remember the records, at the time, it was about $7,400 a year, I think, to keep that energized and heated. So at this point in time, with just minimal heat in it and lights that just get turned on typically when somebody goes in to check on something, should be extremely minimal right at the moment.
So what you're saying, Doug, is we could advertise, and if we get any bids, would come back to council to make the final determination on it.
Transfer.
Yes.
So
Do we have an appraised value of this building at all? Has the assessor looked at it and given us any kind of number?
Last time it was about 180,000, I believe it was around 180,000, Counselor, 4 or 5
We had an
years ago.
appraisal, I'm sorry, Mayor, we had an appraisal at one point in time around 2009 or 2010. I don't have the figure with me. I thought it was much closer to $60,000 or $80,000.
I remember that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
60 or 70. Yeah.
And a lot of that was based on the zoning issues and the layout of the building, and it's...
did we get any bids last time, do you know? No, we didn't get anything at all?
One party was interested, and they couldn't conform with the zoning, and they walked away.
What is the current zoning for that building? Is it residential?
Residential.
Residential.
And to my understanding, the only reason the fire department was there was residential, but because it was a fire department, it was allowed to be built there. Council, I agree with everything you've said. At the same time, Council Green, I'll just pick on you for a second. It is in our capital improvement budget, and it has been for many, many years. But as a council, we've never taken any action, and we are remiss at that. I don't feel we should keep this building forever, but at the same time, if we're going to do something, let's look at the entire picture and work on the entire picture, both not only for the fire department, but also the police department. They're cramped for room. They need some upgrades to their working conditions. So I would just ask that we hold off on doing this until we come up with a master plan in the very near future. That will put our feet to the fire.
See, this is talk that we've heard so many times, and we talk about city buildings and affordability. I mean, we completely neglect, I think, the affordability of what people in the city are going through right now, and the upkeep their homes, the 50% of the people that still own their homes in the city, all right, and the rest are all rental units. So let's look at it from that point of view. I mean, this is not another building that we need to upkeep. Let's put this on the market, all right, and let's see what the private sector can do with it.
I wish I could agree with you, Councilor, and I do to a point about what you said about our residents, but I don't agree with getting rid of it and let someone else worry about it. As I said, it's been discussed for many, many years. Nothing's taken place. At the same time, we have to charge the chief with finding storage space for the equipment that's stored there. So how does that implicate the fire department? How does it impact the fire department? So
and that's the challenge that the chief and every other department head that has large equipment has to deal with, from the DPW to the police department. It's a challenge. These are the challenges of stressful fiscal times. That's why this is where we got to look at breaking down and building back up. And the only way we're going to do that is going from the norm and taking these steps to address the fiscal reality that we have right now.
Well, we're breaking down, we're not building back up. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, I don't think it's going to hurt to see what kind of, if there's any market out there at all, and it comes back in front of the council, and we still have the final say on it. So I'm sure we're not going to sit here and give it away for $1, but if there's somebody out there willing to do something with it and pay the city some good amount of money, and we can use that money to offset some of our other expenses with the fire department, so be it. I don't think anything ventured, nothing gained, so no problem.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilor Graney?
Yes.
Councilor Camardo?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Aye.
Councilor Zika?
I have to abstain because I have a family member that went and looked at the building and has an interest, so that I avoid any type of perceived conflict. I'll have to abstain.
Mayor Quill?
No.
Carried.
Council Resolution number 97, and Doug, this should actually be under table legislation.
It should be, yes.
It should be, so. Council, you want to move forward on this as long and just next time take it, put it where it belongs? Sure. It's out of order in the agenda.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Council Resolution number 97 of 2013, authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement on behalf of the City of Auburn with the Auburn Large City School District for the assignment of school resource officers. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Smith, second by Councilor Graney.
Agreement Resolution Number 97 of 2013 by Councilor Smith, seconded by Councilor Graney. Whereas the City of Auburn and the Auburn Enlarged School District have previously entered into agreements whereby the Auburn Police Department assigns police officers to act as school resource officers at designated schools of the Auburn Enlarged School District in order to promote communication and cooperation and to establish a partnership amongst students. And whereas the assignment assists the school district to create a safe and secure environment for students and staff through law enforcement and to assist in identifying and referring students with specific needs through appropriate programs and counseling. And whereas the previous contract for services has expired and it is necessary to renew a contract that will provide 4 school resource officers for the 2013-14 school year, and that reimbursement for these services from the school district to the city shall be in the amount of $231,982. Now therefore be it resolved that the parties do hereby agree as follows. 1, that the Auburn City Council does hereby approve an agreement between the City of Auburn and the Auburn Enlarged School District to provide for the assignment of 4 Auburn Police Department officers as school resource officers for the 2013-2014 school year. 2, that the Auburn Enlarged City School District shall pay the sum of $231,982 as reimbursement for the cost of the officers so assigned for the 2013-14 school year. Be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign an agreement between the Auburn Enlarged School District and the City of Auburn in order to provide the Auburn Police Department officers to be assigned as school resource officers for the 2013-14 school year.
We have 2 members of the school board, and I do want to address an issue that was brought up. 3? I'm sorry. I'm really stepping on myself tonight. So when I walked in this evening, Connie was here, your superintendent of schools. I did not recognize who the gentleman was with her. If we had known, myself, Mr. Selby, or any other members of council had known that they wanted to address the council, we would certainly have given them all the time that they had needed. When they stepped up to the public to be heard, I'll take responsibility for it, not having any clue to what was going on. So it was not done to slight the school board at any time. I think we've been more than courteous with our other elected officials. So if you would please carry that message back, that's why it was done the way it was.
Mayor, I stepped out in the hall and asked him, at least one of them to stay, because I knew we were going to have a conversation about the program, but I don't know if they had another appointment or not. It was kind of hectic out in the hallway. So.
Mayor, if I may.
Councilor Smith.
There's a couple things that I think we need to address. One, to say the council is not in favor of this SRO program is definitely not true. For one, and put aside the fact that I am an educator, and I see the importance of SROs, especially within the city of Auburn. And we as a council, we're privy to information in regards to what type of activities going on, criminal activity within the city. As a coach in the school district, we had, 2 years ago, we had some fanatic streaking pretty much throughout the school building. And it really hits home when you go to your son's kindergarten orientation, and the principal has to describe the new rules of entering the building. And I'm sure Councilor Camardo has seen this too, the new rules at Seward School, where you can't just go into the foyer and the school's on lockdown. Unfortunately, that's our culture today. We have a very violent, and we have a culture without a moral compass. So that brings the need for SROs. I have from day one, and will continue to do so, support student resource officers within the school district. I've seen the benefits of SROs. I've seen the proactive approach that SROs have taken to heading off potential problems. And that's not an issue. In the one meeting that we did have, my main attention for being at that meeting with Mr. Rossi was to discuss the crossing guard issue and making sure that all bases were covered. So having said that, I do not have a problem funding the SR program. But on the flip side, though, too, I do believe that our police chief and our police personnel should be the ones that are running the program from the city standpoint. We don't want the city officials taking care of the education in the city of Auburn. The state already does a mess in doing that. We want city school district officials to take care of the educational problems, and we want to provide the security, and we're happy in doing that. But we also want to find ways that are cost effective. So I'm in favor of supporting the SROs and passing a resolution that does that. But at the same time, we need to look at doing it too in a way that's also cost effective. Now, if 4 officers last week, we talked about the football game, costs between $908 or $960. So that's roughly $240 a piece. Now, we need law enforcement at the football games. I've been going to football games my whole life, ever since I was a young kid and playing football in the Holland Stadium. We know how large the crowds can be there. But what we could easily have done, though, is had other regular uniformed police officers there, paying them $80 apiece instead of $260 apiece. So if that's what the chief is comfortable with, and he's okay in putting regular police officers at a football game or a soccer game, lacrosse game, whatever it may be, I'd rather pay $80, a flat fee to a police officer, $80, than costing us $240 or $250. And if my math is wrong, please correct me, but I'm just going by the figures we've looked at. I've spoke with the school superintendent. She was very gracious in discussing this with me, and we want a relationship with the school district. I mean, as in many communities, the school district is the center of the community, especially when it comes to the academic achievements, the athletic achievements, the arts, and so forth. We want to address this, but we want to also address this in a way that's good for both sides. Now, when we're talking about huge contracts, and these are huge contracts, and these are huge contracts for services provided by the city, there should never be considered a boilerplate type of a contract. I think that's irresponsible on both sides. I, and as the rest of council, I'm sure, is in full support of protecting our children, and we have done that. We will continue to doing that, but we want to make sure that the actual cost being incurred is the cost that the city taxpayer can afford. So when we're looking at extracurricular activities, I'm in favor of paying a flat fee to regular rank and file police officers, not just to the SROs.
And it's my understanding the chief did give the school that option, and they chose to go with the SROs at probably 3 times the cost. Chief, want to come up here? Was that option given to the school?
Yeah. The options, see, in the past, hockey games, basketball games, football games, they've been paid by, basically, I'll just use the contract. So in the past, it's been posted off-duty assignments, $80. We'll just say, I'm just using $80. It could have been more, could have been less. We'll just use $80. So in the past, it's been $80, we'll say. So that goes up for bid amongst the rank and file. People sign up for it or they don't sign up for it. They get it by seniority. So all of a sudden, over the last few years, the SROs have moved in as far as working these games, and it's at time and a half because they've done their 80 hours during the week. They come in at time and a half, and I've got the figures. There should have been one more working possibly Friday, so your total would have been $1,100 and some odd dollars. In the past, like I said, say that use that $80 as a reference. We'll just use 5 people, obviously. It worked the game, and it would have been $400 to work that. That's a flat rate. That doesn't go into their pension. That's just something the guys decide, okay, we'll work this game for $80. We choose to do that. Now, that $80 is, if they work 2 hours for the event, that's $80. If they work 3 hours, it's $80. 4 hours, etc. They get $80. Doesn't matter how long they're there, they get $80. In turn, with the SROs, if they're 2 hours, they get time and a half for 2 hours, and sequentially, if it goes 3, 3.5, 4, they get paid time and a half for that. So as far as you're getting the same security, if you want to use the word security, but you're getting 4 or 5 police officers to do the same job. I mean, there's talk of the SROs with knowing the children or the kids. That's fine and dandy, but I mean, if you're looking at, I'm looking at a cost of, out of, my budget at $1,100, $1,200 compared to the school pay. The $80 it's paid to, that's always been contractual with the school. The school has paid that in the past.
And Chief, to that relationship that's built, there's validity to that within a building. But now, when you're at a facility like Holland Stadium, where there's thousands of people there, there's hundreds of kids running away. I mean, that's we have we need law enforcement there, and we should have law enforcement there. Recently there was the Port Byron Weedsport football game, and that's quite a big rivalry. I mean, there's a lot of things could happen there. For obvious reasons, they've had such a competitive rivalry for years, but they have law enforcement officials there. Neither school, I know Weedsport doesn't have SROs, but they had law enforcement officials there that the kids were not familiar with. All right, but the bottom line is safety was provided, and that's what we want. We want safety being provided at these football games, at these hockey games, especially the hockey games. But we can do that without having to pay this extra cost. And that's what you were just saying.
Right. Yeah.
Chief, one second. Chief, were the SROs eligible for the $80 a night, for lack of better terms? They could have signed that.
Absolutely.
They're not excluded. Pardon? They're not excluded.
No, they're not excluded.
Mr. Rossi?
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Chief, I don't think you were here when the letter was read, but were you contacted after you told the school that you were not going to authorize the SROs to serve at the football game at overtime? Somebody contact you?
I was contacted by my sergeant, who...
What about a school official?
I wasn't personally contacted by the school official.
Did someone from...
It was through the sergeant talking, I believe it was, I mean, I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was...
Wasn't there a statement made to the department that the school would cover the SROs?
Yeah. That was the plan. When the sergeant came to me, he asked me, he spoke to one school official, and they were willing, if it was all right with me, to cover the cost for that game Friday night, this past Friday, cover the cost at time and a half for the SROs to work that game. So, I wanted it in writing, obviously, and they were willing to cover that cost for that night, and it was for just that game at the time, because all this other stuff was going on. So they agreed to do that, and then Monday when I came to work, I saw the email, and they weren't willing to cover the whole cost of for that night.
I see, Diane, you're shaking your head. Thea.
Mayor,
Thea.
No, they shouldn't.
Councilor Camardo?
Mayor, first off, so everybody knows, this document was up for renewal, 2 weeks ago, I believe, Doug, was the initial. So it was something that the school district knew they had to come to the city about and talk about the document, correct?
Correct.
And I just want to make sure some assurances were out there. When people make the allegation that assurances were made on staff, it's this council, the 5 members of council, who set policy here and would vote on this contract. So anybody to go out and make assurances on behalf of the council, that doesn't happen. I don't think that happens at the school district on behalf of the school board. So I just want to get that statement cleared up. All the Auburn taxpayers who are footing the bill for the SROs, and I believe it's about $180,000, correct? The cost to the taxpayers of the city is about $180,000.
Above and beyond what the school is contributing. Yeah.
Above and beyond.
Let me
The school
say this
district gives you $230,000, gives the city $230,000.
Let me
Sure,
correct
go ahead.
myself on that too, because there have been different ways that cost has been calculated. Calculated as low as $70,000 and up to $112,000 or $20,000. I used a different percentage allocation of time than the school district has used. I used what the chief gave me. So there's some differences in that number, but suffice it to say, the school district's contribution doesn't cover the entire cost of the program.
So how much is above and beyond the $231,000? It's about $180,000, isn't it? Is that what you reported to us last week?
What I'm telling you is I will amend that number downward to the order of $100,000.
So over and above the 231, it's 100,000.
Yeah.
See, this is where the problem is. We need to get accurate numbers out there so that people understand what we're talking about. But anyway, once that happens, I hope we can get the proper numbers out there. I'm all for the SROs. I think it's an important program. I have a little problem with this overtime that's evolved over the years. The intent of the program was to provide SROs in the schools during the school day. Now, all of a sudden, over the years, and this happened before at least I was on council, we provided overtime for dances and things like that. I think we've gotten out of the scope of what the initial intent of the program is. And unfortunately, when we're looking at financial problems that the city's facing right now, we need to look at everything across the board. And I think the city residents are burdening their city tax dollars plus school district tax dollars, and they're footing a program here which has cost them quite a bit of money. So can we work through this? Yes, I think we can. But we need to look at every dollar that's being spent in these areas, and I think it's very important. I wish that members of the school district could have been here. I asked them to stay. They left. There was things we wanted to discuss with them, but we need to move on. But like I said, I'm all for the program. I just have a problem with paying for these overtime costs that are associated with this program. So.
And I'm in very much agreement with you, John, here. The guy standing at that podium is the guy that should be running the show here. He makes the determination. He's got a solution here. I think, to me, it's a very obvious that it's a highly cost-effective solution. And the fact that you can get, I'm going to say, the $80 value that the SRO is at $240, it's a no-brainer here. I don't see the problem. The protection's there. The presence is there, and it's at a cost beneficial to both the taxpayers and the school district. If they have to, whoever has to pick it up, it's more beneficial. I think, Chief Nagel, you're right on target here.
Let me ask you a question. Even if an officer is on duty, correct? What's the response time? He's going to call in for help if he needs it. They have extra officers there. It's going to be a minimum
2-3 minutes, probably.
Minutes, correct? Because they're so close by.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's also another option, but I mean, it's contractual, but let's just use Friday night as an example. If the SROs, if all parties in agreement as far as the school and myself, if the SROs, and I'll just use numbers, if the SROs wanted to work 4 hours during the school day, and then if the school wants the SROs to be at that program, then they could work 4 hours during the day at the school, and they could come back and work 4 hours at the football game and split their shift.
I wouldn't be in agreement with that. I think their initial job is to be at the school. That's the intent of the program.
Then we've answered the second question.
Right. At least that's my feelings on it.
Now, Chief, you've gone through that contract. You had the final say in anything those SRO officers do, correct?
Right. So if I might just
let him do his job.
Comment on the contract. This contract has been basically the same since before my time, which is 6 years ago. And a number is always given to my office by the comptroller's office as to the cost of the program to the city. And that's what's been communicated to the school district. And Counselor, I believe you brought it up, whether this covered the entire cost, including the fringe benefits. And I understood that it did, but it did not. So we found that out. So that's where you're talking about the difference in the city cost and the monies were being reimbursed by the school district. And I think looking at the contract, and I agree, nothing should be boilerplate, but it served the program well in the past, but there were certain provisions in the contract that were not observed on every occasion, and that related back to the chief's responsibility and his authority, that if there is a change in duties or time of the resource officers, it has to be with the chief's consent. That has not been done in the past, and that's what we're running into now.
Yeah, because there's a change in leadership styles, that's where the roadblock, if you will, is coming in.
Then you get into the overtime problem, which is doubly costly. And
Well, it's good. Yeah,
You're
go
right.
ahead.
It's not that anybody does not want the program. And when we talked about the assurances, nothing was made above and beyond what the council would approve. It now hinges all really on overtime costs and the fringe benefit costs that impact this program heavily.
Well, that's why it's a good review every year to make sure we look at it and, fine tune it if we can to save every dollar we possibly can. But I think it's a responsibility of ours that we look not only at this, but every contract that comes across the desk, so.
Mr. Selby or Mr. Rossi, has the school board, and I don't know how it works there, but has the powers to be at the school system approved the contract from there?
No, I think once we got into our situation where we table it, and quite frankly, our conversations with the superintendent, which she fairly stated the position of the school board that they passed their budget in May, so they cannot alter that amount for this coming year, but this will be the subject of further negotiations early in 2014 to work out the dollar values.
And if we can make sure that's on the calendar, Doug, that, we talk about this in advance.
Their budgeting process is different than ours, so we would need to notify them in January, February. And in defense of our comptroller, she was doing what had been done in previous years, just consistently estimating the costs based on that. So,
just one last thing, would you make sure that you get all the costs involved so they realize that right to the penny, and we're not trumping up any costs, so to speak, so that everybody's aware of what the total costs of the program are.
Right. And Mayor, if I may add one other thing, the last discussion I was involved in really revolved around the understanding that the school district was limited in the amount that they could fund, and that we needed to work this year on the overtime issue, and that next year, during their budgeting process, we would offer maybe numbers that represented more of the cost for their consideration. So, we're not trying to hold anybody hostage, or at least as staff, we weren't trying to hold anybody hostage. We were simply negotiating, and when we got to that point, we understood the school district's limitation on being able to fund anymore, and it became the issue of, well, we can work on the overtime issue with the chiefs, different types of proposals, and better adherence to the terms of the agreement that involves the chief in changing work hours to accommodate after-hours activity.
We need to pursue the surrounding communities.
Absolutely.
We've been, I think as all of us have been told one thing or another over the years, and I would like something officially telling us, well, whether they could be billed to pay for this or not. So
You ask every year, Mayor.
I realize, Council, I've been amongst you, but I think it's time we get a determination.
No, we asked, and we received answers. I don't know if you guys remember the letter that was immediately sent, I think within a week. Absolutely not. I don't want to say the town, but they wanted nothing to do with paying a portion of that cost.
It's time we take a serious.
Well, let's send a request out, Doug. Have them officially say no once again.
Yeah.
We can ask again.
Right,
Sure.
try. You got the numbers on how many kids come to the district, or are involved in the district, I should say, right? I've seen those.
There are percentages.
Percentages, right.
That are
Mhm.
used, yeah.
Yep.
No one on this, myself, anyone here on this side of the rail is against SROs. We're completely
not.
in favor of it. But at the same time, as an Auburn taxpayer, any of the Auburn taxpayers, we're paying twice.
Sure.
And some of our neighbors are paying once.
Or not at all.
Or not at all. Well, they're paying into, or not at all. Some pay into their community, some don't. But we've got to come to some conclusion, and we would hope we would get some help from the school board, the school administration, is to looking at that. There's more strength in numbers, and if we can get together, it puts you in a tenuous position. We understand that, but you're elected officials, you roll with it, so you're.
Well, and we've shown our support by word and by deed. And Councilor Camardo's point, I mean, we're paying $100,000 over. So that shows the extent of our support, and we are not derelict of our duty of protecting the children in our schools with our SRO program. That's for sure.
Options were given.
It sounds to me like options were given, and to me, the chief has a good handle on it, and I think, Chief, do your job. you know what you got to do.
What's that?
Okay, thanks.
Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Counselor Graney?
Yes.
Counselor Camardo?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye.
Carried.
Local laws.
None.
Table legislation we just covered. Other business, council?
I was going to bring up the, in ordinance number 6, in that particular section. We don't want to put the brakes on what's happening in downtown. And I don't think that's going to happen with that council. But, you know, just to go off of that, and this was the point I was going to make, is I think we need to look at, and I know Mr. Berry was one of the individuals that talked about his circumstances with his business. I think we do need to look in a case-by-case basis of some of these smaller businesses and how the parking situation affects them. So not just in downtown, but in other parts of the city. So that's all I was going to say on that point. I wasn't going to elaborate anymore. But I do have another item, the other business. We received information on our budget status reports in the general fund, the solid waste fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. And what I'd like to see, Doug, and again, and this is maybe my fault, I wasn't clear enough, but I'd like to see the information be a little bit more specific. I'd like to have the reports be presented by budget category for each department. So each department monthly present their budgets. We look at the numbers. And in my opinion, I don't think it's ever too early to be evaluating whether a specific department is on track. So if we see a department that is, their spending is quite high, they've used a large percentage of their available budget, I think there needs to be some explanations as to why that is. And I know some expenditures are not evenly spread, but I think many are. So for those departments that are, I like to see that detailed reporting. So once again, what I'm requesting is that monthly, and again, let's look at the reality review the following month. So again, we are being very aggressive, very progressive in dealing with the budget restraints. And the only way to get a handle on the spending, and again, that's what it comes down to. I don't care how much revenue you're bringing in, we got to look at our spending ability. Our departments have to mirror what our city's capable of paying. So the only way to get a handle on the spending is to consistently critique, analyze, and have detailed explanations from every department head as the spending that is going on within their department. I don't know how I'm inviting the rest of council to please comment on that.
This is exactly what I said before, where we have the monthly reports or monthly activity reports, but tied in with the budget. That these not only serve as the activity or of the department, but also what their budget numbers are running here. And to Councilor Smith's point, unfortunately, we need to watch this because, again, we got to live within a property tax cap. We got to, if we hit a big deficit, what's it mean? Well, something's got to give. So in order to forestall hitting that wall, so to speak, we got to watch everything. And it's due diligence. I mean, it's not micromanaging that everybody likes to throw out. It's being very diligent and guarding the fiscal soundness of the city. We all know, and it's no secret, that we're not unique. All municipalities are facing the same issues, and to have us turn a blind eye and then have all of a sudden, once a year, a big card flashes up, hey, you're in trouble. We got to live within a property tax cap. The state has put that limitation on us. We have to make sure we live within it. If we have to go, and I, for one, will never support us going over that threshold. Certain things that we had to do in order to maintain that threshold. That's basically the analogy of Wegmans. You got $40 worth of stuff on the belt and you got $30 in your hand. The cashier is going to tell you, you put $10 back. And that's what we're facing.
So I'm just asking from a process view, if that's something council would be willing to entertain.
Counselor, I'd be glad to entertain. I think it's an eye-opener for all of us, so there are no gotcha moments in May. The only thing I would request, just to refine a little bit, and maybe you have this in mind, I don't want to receive it the night of the meeting and then to go over it.
No, again...
I knew Counselor Camardo was going to say it. I just wanted to save him some
The
time.
information for next week has to be in the Friday package.
And, you know, and a good example of that exercise is what the chief just done with the SROs. Look at the savings right there.
Right.
If I could just add one thing that I'd like to see, Doug, is the year-to-date from last year, so we can compare a guide. You can use it as a guide, what the department is spending compared to what they spent last year. That's the way I usually like to look at the budgets, how they're trending compared to previous years, or at least the last year, what they spent in that area.
The yardstick.
Right, and that's very easy to come up with in those areas. Second thing is we've talked about this numerous times. I know you're trying to come up with some job duty statements, but we need to start looking at restructuring and how we're going to get the city in at least in a forward direction so we can control some of our costs. But I still want to look at restructuring with some of the departments and how we can move forward with that.
Well, to that point, Doug, we are advertising for a comptroller, correct?
Well, I pulled back, the ad is still out there, but in light of the discussion, I revised the job description, so there's one that's assistant city manager / comptroller, and then assistant comptroller / treasurer. I got those, finally wrote those job descriptions up, got them on the right forms, took them to civil service. They considered them on Monday and recommended some modifications. So one of them's been modified, the other I need to modify. We'll go back to civil service and come back to the council to authorize this. I didn't want to recruit for a position that...
We'd have to modify.
that we were changing.
To Councilor Camaro's point, is there a particular department that you guys would like to look at now? I think setting the department like we did the finance before, is there a particular one? Now let's set our...
The only thing that I'm going to say, that I've said this in the past, if we're looking at restructuring, we got to come out with cost savings, because I know we're going to be looking at an assistant controller and assistant city manager, but out of that restructuring, we need to look at a substantial cost savings. We just can't walk down that road and say, okay, we're restructuring. We need to come to the table and say we saved this kind of money by doing this endeavor.
Do you want to pick a department now, though?
Well, if we're going ahead with finance, that's fine, but the one thing that I've had these conversations with Doug is we need to have substantial savings if we're walking down that path. It's just not, we're going to have restructuring and we came up with this plan, but where's the money? Where's the saved money that we're coming up?
Now, with the finances, we're going to save about, it was between 80 to 100,000?
I didn't bring the numbers tonight, but we already have eliminated a clerk from the department, and what we talked about with the council was having the comptroller or assistant city manager employed at a higher level to attract and retain somebody that's talented enough to do what we need to do. And I would add that I think with the proper people and the proper capacity, we can probably save more money by doing more detailed analyses. Right now, we're kind of limited.
Absolutely.
I try to do things, Bob tries to do things, departments do things, but we don't have a rigorous analysis of every expenditure, and as a result, there are savings opportunities I think we're missing.
In the second area, we can start working on right away. I think we need to do some more planning and then go from each department and see how we can start.
That's what I'm saying. We set a target date for another department.
Sure. Let's do 30 days or 15 days where we'll look at planning and go from there.
Okay, so let's brainstorm. We'll come up with a department next week we want to work on and set a time frame.
Go from there.
Doug, another thing is you sent out an email earlier outlining some paperwork or whatever, I'm going to say, that you seem to indicate that you were somewhat uncomfortable about regarding the ambulance service. I think we need to move forward on that certificate of need and a some kind of performance clawback clause on that.
Yeah, it just, so people don't misunderstand, it's not unhappy with the ambulance service.
No, we are not.
The
No.
fact that there are forms that come across my desk that I have to sign.
Because of
that
where the certificate
I
of need is.
accept great liability for things that we really don't control.
Right, exactly. And I think that it's answerable with the reassignment of the certificate of need. And if we have a provision that, I'm going to say, has the performance clawback, then everyone's reasonably happy.
Exactly.
The only thing I want to touch on, council, is a couple of our people that were here, our citizens, talking in public to be heard. And it's good not to be able to debate them, but at times I wish we could debate them a little bit to get some of the points across. And the only thing I want to bring up is about the newspapers. The city of Auburn, nor any government, controls the newspapers. So we cannot and Greg, this is not against you personally, we cannot force the newspaper to print anything that they don't want to. This parking probably should have been in a newspaper, but it's not our call. We can't force them to print that. The comment about being in Pango's Park, that doesn't even deserve any more comment than that. But, you know, myself and the council and the manager and everyone on staff does their best to get the word out is what we're doing, but we're limited. Most people don't even read the newspaper today. Some do, some don't, but we can't put every article in there. We can't afford to pay for that. And secondly, if the newspaper doesn't want to print it or whatever, then our hands are tied.
Well, the other thing is that these discussions happened in over, I'm going to say, more than one meeting. So wasn't it that it was brought up one week and then the next week it precipitated out, that it does evolve over at least 2 to 3 meetings. And to me, that's a highlight of a meeting that's not being captured in an article.
Well, the thing is, when you look at, it said parking ordinance, and there was a lot of different things involved in that, and I don't think people read through the different things that we were going to be considering. So.
Well, it's my understanding that the newspaper gets a copy of the agenda and the package. So if they were to take the time of reading through the ordinances and things, they would have, and I'm assuming they get it at the same time we do, which is typically a Friday.
Thank you for reminding me. I wanted to mention that.
So my point being is that it's there for them to read, and if they find something that they feel should be published, in fact, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if they put the whole darn thing out on someplace, you know, if need be. But I'm just saying it's there to be picked. The cherry's there to be picked, and if the fruit stays in the tree and rots, what are we going to do?
Please, not Council Rots. They don't come out in the paper like that, Councilor Smith.
Just a motion for executive session.
In regard...
Contractual.
Contractual?
Yes.
Do we have to be more specific, Mr. Rossi?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Motion on the floor for executive session. Do we have a second? Councilor Camardo? Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Graney?
Yes.
Councilor Camardo? Yes. Councilor Smith?
Aye.
Councilor Rozika?
Yes.
Mayor Quill?
Aye. We'll be in recess for executive session.